Why don't we just start the meeting? 7:02, meeting is begun. Park. Julie, did you want to explain how the Wi-Fi, the camera and
Yeah.
video works?
So first off, this is the park meeting of Tuesday, August 17th. You're being recorded by RCTV. The meeting is hybrid here in person and over Zoom. The way this works for everyone who's in the room is it's a video and a microphone, right? So it responds to the sound in the room, this owl. These mics here will pick up your sound for the Zoom audience. So don't just leave them on. If you mute one, you mute them all, and then it will be hard for people participating over Zoom to hear what the conversation in this room is. The mics are really sensitive too, so if you're in the audience and you're making noise, it might pick you up and Zoom to you. That's the basic gist of how it works. If you're here with a device, like I mentioned, if you do log into Zoom, just make sure you're muted and make sure your speakers are off on your computer. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of feedback that you'll hear immediately. So that's the basic gist. Hi, Liz. And from staff, there's me, Jean, and Andrew is on Zoom. Andrew being technical staff planner. Back to you, Bernie.
So I'm Bernie Horn, Chair of the Parking and Advisory Recommendations Committee. Why don't we just go around from left to right, introduce ourselves for the public so that then we can get started.
Chris Haley.
Dan Dewar.
Jay Jackson.
Ms. Whitelam?
Tom O'Connor.
Karen Rose Gillis.
Thanks. So I guess we distributed an agenda. This is meant to be an agenda not just for this meeting. Maybe nice if we can get through all the agenda items of the meeting, but obviously we're not going to do that. But at least it sets the stage for at least this meeting and then future meetings, which obviously will be determined in terms of their dates. So I think that we, at our last meeting prior to being, I guess we probably should acknowledge that the select board has voted us into existence. Is that correct, Chris?
Yep, so the select board also approved Dan, Liz, and what's that?
Tom.
Oh, yes, Dan, Liz, and Tom's applications so they can participate fully in everything. They approved mine as well, but I'm still limited to 300 feet within my business at Haven Street. So everything is signed off from the select board in that regard.
Okay. So I guess that means we're official. We can then, we have a charge from the select board. Perhaps we should just display that and make sure that we're kind of getting off on the right foot. I know we did that last meeting, but that was before we were kind of holding open public meetings, so we can perhaps do that. Julie, is that something that you can pull up?
So there it is on this
And
screen. This is the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee page on the website. I haven't linked the parking information to it yet because for some reason this page is uneditable. IT is working on it. But this is the charge here.
so maybe one thing, we can take some of these out of order just because it might facilitate us getting going. I think one of the things that we discussed doing was establishing various zones that we can talk about. One of the reasons for that is that, we have members who are unable to, they must recuse themselves for discussions on certain areas within 300 feet of their business. So one thing we could discuss first perhaps is organizing ourselves by zone. I handed out, I handed these suggestions. I think everybody has one. I can make those, I can email those to I'm not sure how I would proceed to make those public, but I know other people may have also prepared some material as well. But on number 7, our agenda item number 7, I've ordered these in the same as the agenda items. So that would be on the second page. I was just thinking of trying to keep it simple. Maybe have 2 downtown and 1 outside downtown zones that we can serve to discuss. So we could make,
copies? Do you have any more copies for the public?
absolutely.
Myself as well.
Bernie, do you have like an electronic version I can put on the screen for Sarah?
Can we just pass those? Here, I'll just give you all the ones that
I understand the climate control goals here. It is very hard to hear with this window open. Will it ruin everybody's life if I close this window?
Not at all.
I.
So Bernie, if you can email it, I'll screen share it for you.
So perhaps, so this, I'm just putting this out as a suggestion. We could, discuss, I would, one suggestion would be, can we establish a zone that's bordered by about 300 feet from, let's say, is the corner of Haven and, across from the railroad station, is that sufficient? I'm not sure where your business is, Chris.
So Julie had sent me over a 300-foot graphic that, if you wanted to share that, that's what you sent me on 8/4. So if you can bring that up, it's a 300-foot graphic. It hasn't been approved by town council yet because she's on vacation currently. So this is the current graphic. So it looks as if, pending approval from Ivrea, it would be south of Linden Street and just kind of the start at Gould Street where the new Green Tomato and the 24 Gould Street thing would be going up that direction. So that's currently, my building is right there in the orange and in the dead center. So even though the train station somewhat doesn't cover that entire circle, I'm precluded from mentioning anything at that whole train station parking lot below as well. So the bottom left of that graphic, the whole train station area.
And half of Woburn Street?
I did not, that's specifically what I put in the email to Ivrea is, how is the Woburn Street kind of thing worked out? Because it would be nice to say I can do south of Woburn, south of Linden, and then I'm good.
See, what's
So-
challenging about this is that I don't understand how we could talk about part of Woburn. Like, we're gonna be talking about street parking and we're gonna be talking about lot parking, so I'm not sure how we can safely craft a discussion saying, oh, I'm not talking about this part of Haven Street, when one of the stated goals is, like, let's simplify the kinds of, I'm just feeling challenged by this.
Well, that would be just for you guys, not for me. So when anyone is talking about anything, I will personally just recuse myself from anything that's mentioning. If you happen to bring it up and we're in the phase 1 area, I won't mention anything about it. So you guys can say whatever you want. It's just me that is bound by that. So all of you can discuss you can bring up my building 10 minutes after the meeting or whatever. It won't matter at that point. It's just me that
So it
is
doesn't
recused.
stop the flow of the discussion, it just stops you from.
It just stops me, that's all. So if you bring it up, I won't be mentioning anything, answering any questions. If someone says, does your office XYZ? I won't be answering.
I
So you
guess,
guys-
just getting back to your proposal of how we discuss things. If you're able to just sort of, well, basically I'm like, oh, you're gonna have to just be silent all the time, because if we're talking about what is our policy for parking lots, like, I don't know that we would adjudicate what happens in the Haven parking lot any differently than the CVS parking lot. And for street parking, if we're trying to come up with, like, for example, if we followed this inner core versus outer core, which makes a lot of sense as a starting point, because work has been done. We can't talk about just part of Woburn Street as the other, we need to talk about all of it. So I guess that's I guess it's hard for me to envision talking about the downtown in zones when it's really that we have to talk about the type of parking lots versus streets, inner versus
Yeah,
outer.
but we can still talk about it, it's just that
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, this doesn't look like, I mean, I'm assuming that the radius of this circle, it's not quite a circle though, it's supposed to be 300 feet
Yes.
from the building out to the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sort of square it off if it made any sense to say from Haven up to, is that? I can't
It's
see that.
Linden Street
Linden.
is kind of the cutoff. So
Yeah,
anything
so
above
Haven to
that,
Linden,
just separate it
down
by that.
to, you know, from Woburn south of, that's not, I don't see that, if there's anything there, and then Lincoln from Woburn to, whatever the street would be,
guess
the
in-
next street, or,
In simplifying it, would just be anything that is from that part of Linden Street, this whole direction. Because obviously over here is going that way. It's anything that's just going that way. So I can have something more finalized from Ivrea when she gets back. I don't want to say that I can do X, Y, Z, because Woburn specifically is what I saw in this map, right? How my business applies to Woburn Street, I have no idea, but it is what it is. At the same time, it would seem as if I'm taking a spot from somebody else, but I do have my own opinions on all the other parts of Reading as well. So, and I'm just one of many of them. So maybe an Upper Haven, Lower Haven kind of scenario, whatever you guys want. And you can combine them both, and I can just, abstain from talking about it when you have it. But if you're mentioning the CVS parking lot, anything up here, et cetera, then I can chime in and give my 2 cents on all of it. It's just that area, I'll never comment on.
I get that you can not comment on something, but I'm just saying, in terms of discussion and how we're framing the discussion, I would think that we would broadly be talking about parking lots, right? And so I don't want to get you in a legal quandary where we're saying, for example, if we were following some of the initial recommendations, that in the main downtown, town-controlled lots, we were talking about parking kiosks, we'd be talking broadly about all the park, right, about both lots. And so I don't want to put you in a position where you're sort of like, I think in just the CVS lot, it would be great, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm realizing now that I'm seeing the map and how this pertains to our discussion. I'm just a little worried about how we,
Yeah, no, I
Handle
agree
that.
with you. I think in terms of this, if we separate it and you guys can say whatever you want, you should never feel as if I'm being excluded, included in any of the scenario. I'll be able to have my say on certain parts and on other parts I won't. So you guys just keep it all natural. You can have the vote on all the parking lots and all that. Just, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be controlling what I end up replying and saying. But you guys just do everything that you guys are supposed to do.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna
I
police
have a quick
myself.
question. In other situations when there's a conflict of interest, isn't it acceptable that people participate in the discussion, they just recuse themselves when it's time to take a vote? Is this different from that, or?
I was told that I can't participate in that either. The only thing I can technically do is sit in the audience and give my opinion that way as a member of the audience. So that is something I'll be bringing up with Ivrea after we get this more refined on what I could do, and just see if that's advisable still. Because nothing prevents me from doing it. It's more of, I'm saying I'm gonna do it, so.
so we could square this off by orders, like Lincoln Street between Woburn and whatever the.
like, I think what Chris is saying
Greenfield
is, we actually shouldn't worry about that. He's
Yeah.
gonna monitor his own behavior so that we can discuss organically the way we want to talk about street parking or lots or whatever, and you don't have to say, because it would be highly unlikely we would say, this part of Woburn Street, we're gonna treat this way, but 30, feet further, we do differently.
Yeah, it should be a holistic conversation around the entire area.
Yeah, no, I.
Yeah, so we don't wanna create like an arbitrary boundary.
Perhaps I can maybe give this, if we end up voting on anything, could you split the votes, just on votes, separated? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah,
I think maybe when we get to that point, we'll see
Yeah,
if we make,
if there's
because again,
votes
if
on
we're saying,
anything,
if the town is, if we're saying, invest in infrastructure for a kiosk in lots, and then if we voted yes on CVS and no on Haven, then we suddenly are in a wacky position. But yes, I think we can take it as it comes and try to protect you.
I will police myself, and I'll do whatever I can from Ivrea to get my portion of that.
So we could establish a zone A to be 300, a zone 300 feet in radius from the address, which is what?
To Haven.
Two Haven, okay. So, and then the zone within the 40R district is the complement of that. So, the 40R district would be that, and then I was thinking we could have another zone outside the 40R district, just to keep it simple.
Say we wanted to do some sort of a blanket random thing, like just something, just whatever it is, and it just applied to every single space, which included your area and also not your area. Could you not vote on that because it includes that area?
Correct.
Seems very counterproductive.
But if we're voting in a general way, like, we wanna put
Yeah.
kayaks on all the lots, you can vote on that, cause we're not
No.
specifically saying.
I cannot.
So we'll have to split our
We have
votes
to split them.
between these two zones, A and B. So if we define zone A as a 300-foot radius of Two Haven, and then zone B is the zone outside of the zone A, and then zone C would be everything else in Reading, unless we somehow come up in our deliberations that we need to section off other zones.
I think maybe we need to come at this the other way. I think we need to be aware that Chris has this restriction. I don't think we should be guiding, I think we need to go back to the top of your agenda and like, let's set our goals and how we want to approach this,
Yeah.
and then try to accommodate this restriction as we get into the meat of the matter. Because we don't want to go into it saying, okay, we're only going to talk about this in pieces when
No, but we're not talking, we can talk as we want about zones A, B, and C. It's just that Chris might not, if
right, but
something
I'm saying we shouldn't even be thinking about it in terms of zones, like, we don't wanna break
I
it
don't
up
think
and.
we're thinking about it, I think it's just he's thinking about it.
And that's great.
Yeah.
As long as he thinks about zone A, and whenever something is specific to zone A, he can't say anything, and then we may have to structure a vote. I mean, I think in order to, this may be an important first step, only because if we don't establish as a first step, and then we wind up talking about something that includes zone A, then we can't talk about, or he can't.
Well, that might just happen. I mean, that's just kind of,
Yeah.
the conversations are gonna go organically. And I agree, I think we should focus on the goals and what we want to accomplish. And then, we'll keep in mind the sensitivity of the issue, but, let's just see where
I just don't wanna have, I mean, the risk would be that if we don't establish a zone, and then we have a discussion, and then Chris happens to discuss something, but it overlaps.
But we can't not discuss this part of town.
I'm not saying that
when
we're
making
not, no, I'm just saying that we would discuss it. But if Chris happened to make a comment about something in our general discussion, but he didn't say, well, it doesn't apply to zone A, then we would, the deliberations of the committee may be voided because he contributed in some way to a discussion about a zone that he couldn't.
But isn't that up for him to monitor himself?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I guess I'm just concerned that if any of our deliberations would be jeopardized by not having a zone, that he has to recuse himself on, then we might be just wasting our time, that's all. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I think that's a legitimate risk. This is,
So the downside of establishing a zone now would be, it might take us a little bit of time.
I mean, I think we know the zone that he can't talk about. I just think that it's an artificial construct for how we want to talk about parking. Like we want to talk about the whole overall concept. Again, I
Yeah,
think
I
we
think
should
we
start at the
agree on
goals
that,
and
but
work.
Yeah, let's just figure out what the goals are and then, because the goals are irrelevant to his area. Not irrelevant, but non-specific.
I will say, though, that I will always find a way to be able to get my point out there. Some people may know, so We shall see what happens.
All right.
Let's run at number 2.
Okay, so on to, yeah, I mean, I think that this is I think what this does is, so the two goals, I mean, the goals are the tasks in effect that we're doing, which is under 2, and then the, well, there are goals and objectives of our committee, and then there are goals of parking and Reading, and I guess there's a distinction, I see there's a distinction between the two. In other words, our goals are that we have to report back to the Parking Transportation Task Force, and then those recommendations have to be ultimately reported back to the Select Board. I mean, that's satisfying the charge that we're responsible for. So in other words, that would be our committee. Tasks might be a better word than goals for number 2. Whereas 3, I would think would be the goals of what is an optimal parking equilibrium in Reading, which would be a different type of thing. So I mean, I think as far as if we say that number 2 is the tasks of the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee, I've got 3 things here. Does anybody else have any comments on that? We should try to gather data, gather public input, I think, which was a clear mandate in our charge. Seems like that might be one of the more important aspects of our duties, and then evaluate A and B, and then decide what recommendations we might make.
Brian, I think you said you were seems older than the one.
Is that second page?
This-
Is it the second page?
Oh,
Can you
no,
scroll
no,
down?
yeah.
This is page 2 and 3. I'm on page 2. There you
Oh,
go.
okay, all right.
Yeah, so this is, so I mean, that would be, it would seem to be that's relatively straightforward. I don't know if anybody has other things that aren't listed here.
I think the big goal is to find out what the problem is. What, is it employee parking? Is it customer parking? Is it parking is in the wrong place? I'm now obsessing about parking spaces as I'm driving around town thinking, oh, that should be this, but we don't really know. I don't know if your employees have a problem finding a place to park. I think that's kind of the data that we'll have to collect, not only from just who's in what space, but who's being impacted by it the most? Is it the customers? Is it the employees? I don't think I have a clear vision of who's really being impacted by the issues with parking at any given time during the day. Does that make sense?
That would probably be solidly part of A and B.
And the data that Julie and the town has collected thus far is part of the,
Some of that would, that would be obviously part of it. Then it goes back to the 08, 09 studies, the more recent studies. Obviously, there's some things about 08 and 09 that might not apply today, but there may be more. I think there's a little bit more detail in the 08 and 09 because there was a group that got together and collected quite a lot of data back then. And it's just a matter of whether it's applicable now or not. But I mean, it's something we should incorporate by reference.
and then we have the 2018 study, right?
Yeah, and I think that the select board, I think, one of the reasons they established this committee is because maybe they felt like the 18-19 data, or at least there was enough public input at the select board that said, you're not looking at all the details, and you're not looking at all the consequences, let's look at it more broadly. So that's it's our job, which is going to be difficult, I think. That's probably the most difficult part of the whole process, which is how do we gather public input when, people don't typically speak up when they're asked, so, or And I think that was the problem with that the select board found, right? They started making proposed changes even after a series of public discussions. And then once it was before the select board, a whole bunch of people showed up and said, this isn't what we want. And that was what kind of kicked us off, I think.
So what is the problem with the parking? I'd like to know.
I mean, could we stick to two and then, is two,
That could be a whole meeting in
is
itself.
enough, is this a list of all the things that we should be doing? Yes.
I'd just like to echo Karen's point. I think drilling it down between employees and residents or whatever is a major factor in all of this. And it's true that typically people only speak up when they end up seeing issues. You know, you're not gonna have people coming in and saying, Reading has amazing parking, I love what you guys are doing. No, I don't think that ever happens anywhere. So people will only speak up when there's an issue, primarily. So echoing Karen's definitely is something that should be addressed.
Yeah, and I would consider that part of the data gathering and public input would incorporate talking to the businesses, I think we talked, I think some more of the stuff is listed under item 4, which is how do we get all that? And I think that's clearly, as I said, probably the most important thing that we can do here.
But yes, to answer your question, I think the way you have outlined our goals under number 2, your descriptions are broad enough that I think it covers what we are doing. I would say with C, we might want to change the language to provide, we don't get to make the regulations, we get to provide recommendations for the regulations and zones, right? Jean, Julie, right? We don't get to just,
Yeah.
much as I would like to be absolute monarch of park, but
Yeah, that's the point. So evaluate A and B
Yep.
and provide recommendations
and then provide
from the
recommendations.
park
Yep.
to the PTTF for ultimate advice. So at some point, regulations get made and provide new parking regulations. And I think that last sentence should be that the select board effectively does that. Is that not correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, so the select board will ultimately put into place the recommendation here as long as, it's all agreed upon and then voted on with the select board.
So I mean, if we can use that as an outline to organize our efforts to.
Everybody feel comfortable just saying these are our goals?
Maybe could I just propose changing the word goals to tasks in number 2? I'll just make that change on my copy here. That way it's a little bit less confusing with number 3 below. And then maybe instead of provide new parking regulations, provide recommendations of, it's not we can't do that.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Is this the same agenda that we got, or is this, did you say that this was a different, because the one that I printed out doesn't have all this detail?
Yeah, the detail, these are just, so, I was asking everybody to kind of do a homework assignment and bring comments related to these agendas. So my numbers 1 through 7 just follow, or 1 through, I have 1 through 8 on this list, and it simply follows the agenda items that you do see, which has less detail on it.
Okay, and I just wanted to add one other method. I'm happy to do boots on the ground in the downtown area with residents. I'm down there a lot anyway, so.
That would be great. So yeah, the next subject, so any other comments on this second agenda item? Okay. The third agenda item, I suspect is going to be the one that's more, requires a lot more discussion. And that is to establish sort of an objective function or a set of goals that we can use to evaluate a specific parking regulation or other other recommendations. So in other words, if the objective is, this particular suggestion would be to maximize the efficiency and access to parking for the maximum number of visitors to Reading while minimizing cost to visitors in the town. Parking regulations will be based on the achievement of these objectives. So that could be a goal, the goal of the parking regulations in town as it's obviously very general, but so I mean, that's just one thing to throw out, and it's the one that probably has the most discussion around it. So if we, the idea would be, let's establish a set of goals. They may have to be dynamic, they may have to change, but it just, at least it provides a framework that says, does this proposal satisfy this goal? And that would be that's sort of the idea behind it. It's one approach, and that way, because I think what's going to happen is, what's the biggest issue that I think we're faced with is the complexity of what has been developed, over time and what we have right now. And that has generated many, many discussions over many, couple of decades. So, and that's the challenge I think that we have. So I guess I'd just be interested in other, is this a sufficient set of goals? Or is it, it's simple, but it doesn't,
I think it plays into, again, we don't know what the problem is, where, that we have so many different, somewhere it says we have like 20 different parking types in town, and that in itself is confusing, and half of Woburn is 2 hour only, and then literally it's 2 hour only or employee all day, so I think the consistency is missing across town, and again, we need to know what the needs are, so it has definitely changed over the years, and the restaurants demand a lot of stuff at night. CVS and coffee shop demand a lot in the morning, so I think the needs are also based during the time of day. I think that plays into it a little bit. So it's still good, I mean, it's all, I feel like all the goals are almost the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think your overarching statement is a good one, and I think it's also worth hearkening back to the guiding philosophy from the previous task force. Expand access, align supply with demand. Supply on its own is really not the issue. Simplify the system, level the permit playing field, and empower versus penalize in terms of how we approach. I mean, I always admired this philosophy. That was good. And I think the way you summarized it here in number 3 also as sort of an overarching view makes complete sense around that. But I agree with you also, it's fluid, right? It's gonna change as we get more information.
So I guess my take on this is, I know at the last meeting, we found out, or I found out, that the commercial placards have already been exhausted, so anybody who would go to get one right now is out of luck. Is it the same for residential? Is there actual residential placards? Because I don't live around, so is there though?
There are resident access.
And is that reached its max capacity, or is there still ones outstanding for that?
know that there's a maximum number of those.
Okay.
my sense is that if you live in Reading, you can get one. It doesn't, I don't think there's any, I think it's
Yeah, I don't think
It's
there's a
not, it's
finite.
not unlimited because there aren't an infinite number of people who live in Reading, obviously, but it would be, I suppose, maximum would be the number of cars owned by people in Reading.
Bernie, if I could just say, there's a different sticker that's for downtown residents, and I think the last I heard they had put a freeze on giving out any more of those stickers. Those don't let you go to the compost center or park at the depot. They're just for parking in the downtown area by your house. I think that's-
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, you're right.
So that's what I was asking, if there's, 1,000 commercial things and all 1,000 are taken. And then the residential, there's 300 and we have 50 available. It seems as if you can draw the conclusion that the commercial is massively impacted as opposed to the residential. So I think if we had those numbers, that could definitely,
So I think there's the residential kind that Sarah was just referencing that allows you to park at the depot, and then and that's separated from the compost now? I can't remember if that got.
So there's the residential.
And then the ones, the downtown that are specifically tied, I think that's just address, I think there's like
It's address
6
of it.
people, right? I mean, that's not a thing, it's like literally, there are very few residential things in the downtown area. Do they have a specific thing that?
I think there's one address that doesn't have off-street parking associated with it on Gold Street or Queen Street, and they get a special sticker so they can park on their frontage. And then I believe any resident that has an employee parking restriction along their property frontage can also get an employee sticker. And then there's the resident permit Sarah mentioned for the resident-only areas downtown, and then the resident access permit, which I think anyone in town can get. And the way the compost factors into that is, I don't want to misstate, so I can't remember off the top of my head how that factors.
Yeah, that used to be a combo platter with
Yeah.
the train one, but they did.
And then they rip a corner off or something, I don't know, there's
I
some,
don't know.
do you know the details of that?
I'm pulling it up on the website in hopes that there's something. It's complicated, that's to
Yeah.
your point about
Yeah.
how many different regulations.
I didn't know there was that many regulations. It definitely, just explaining all of that, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a separate resident sticker versus the other resident sticker.
Yeah, they've never.
Yeah, it's not really easy to find either when you're on the town website. It takes a little while. I mean, every time I would go to get it, it takes me a little while to find it, but, yeah. And it's actually free for those people that have residences downtown.
Yeah, I mean, I
Pretty
think,
sure it's free.
I guess the way I would think about these deliberations is, like how do you evaluate that? And if our goal is to maximize the efficiency and access to parking for the maximum number of visitors to Reading, and I guess visitors may not be the right,
Maybe users.
visitors to Reading,
Users of downtown. Reading.
users is probably a better term, because visitors implies they're not residents, of course. Users are, yeah, it could be a resident or a non-resident, but, and, well, minimizing costs and so forth. So you could imagine, let's suppose we had downtown residents. We have, let's say, what's the total number of parking spaces? Like it's 1,800, Julie? Is that in the ballpark?
I think there's about 3,400 total, and then maybe 1,400 are considered public.
Right, yeah, so there's parking on private property, and then there's parking on town-owned property, for instance. And so you could have let's suppose you had a situation where you had 1,400 people in 1,400 dwelling units downtown. Those people could, in theory, consume all the parking spaces, all the publicly available parking spaces downtown. So I guess we would have to deliberate as to whether or not establishing such a resident-only zone could, is that going to allow access to the maximum number of people in the maximum number of users of downtown parking? Just sort of a framework. I'm just trying to establish a framework to think about how we evaluate all these different use cases with respect to an overriding goal and objective.
If I could, I don't think it's so much the spaces, the number of spaces. I think it's the length of time. I think that's part of the problem is how much time is going to be allowed to park in that space during the day, how we divide that up. I think that's one of the strong recommendations that the committee should move forward with. We're going to probably try to find and create some more spaces, but the previous committee seems to have done a very good job of getting the total, which seems to be a very good number of spaces. But I think the problem in the past that I hear down there, being a business downtown, is the length of time that people have to, it still seems to be fluctuating how long one can occupy a space legally, and to try and get that moving in. I think it sometimes depends on the days too. You know, and that, as has been mentioned, the time of day and lunchtime. I think Chris mentioned last time, you know, you come up at lunchtime, that CVS lot is very active. You go down there now and there's plenty of spaces. So I think that's one of the things the committee should be working on, is how we can establish, or what we think is a legitimate time to be fair to all.
Yeah, I mean, on the number, I think that falls under this item, agenda number 6, is what kind of research do we need? And that would sort of, I mean, I think that's a very important part of the discussion, right? You could do like a variation analysis, which looks at what you're talking about, the time of day, right? The usage by time of day, time slots during the day, and then the usage by day, right? Is a Wednesday different than a Monday or a Saturday, Sunday? Monthly variations, I mean, is it more used in August or September or January, that sort of thing? And then, I mean, just to try to understand what the use case is for all these things and so forth. I mean, it's, and then why are people going down there? Is it lunchtime because they're going to restaurants? Or is it morning because they're dropping off somebody to daycare? I don't know. I mean, I think that would be useful to try to understand. I mean, that's the, and how do they get there? Is it, and then, and I think one of the problems is that the time of use, right? Is it, I'm going to CVS to pick up a prescription and pick up a couple of things, and I'm going to be there for 15 minutes, and that's all I need, I want to get in and out? Or is it, I'm going to pick up a prescription, but I'm meeting somebody for dinner? And I think that's the demand side of the problem is extraordinarily varied. And then you've got people who need to go to work. So they got to get the 7:30 train and they're not coming back till 6 o'clock. And the car's got to be there for that period of time. So I think that would be useful for us to just focus on, to try to understand the problem. And once we understand the problem, collect enough information, maybe it will help us to figure out what makes sense.
It is true, mentioning CVS up there, it's a unique situation where we have the benefit of being able to go to CVS, but then go get a book or go to a restaurant. Whereas some people now avoid going to the CVS because of the parking and go to the North Reading one.
Right.
But then they don't have that up there. So there is a definite give and take with that. And we're drawing people away from going to our downtown because of that exact scenario. So you might think that, what does somebody going to CVS have to do with buying a book? It definitely impacts it. So.
Well, I would posit that anyone who would spend an extra 10 minutes to drive to North Reading rather than find a space a little further away downtown and walk half a block, right? I mean, that's.
Some of it's elderly, I would attribute to that. It's more of also the perception, like, why am I gonna go downtown to park when I could just, go to CVS up here and just be done with it? And then it's more of the perception.
That's actually a great point. I think one of the goals that we need to add is actually an education component. Because that's half the battle right now, is that there actually is generally, frequently, enough parking and people are just not aware of that.
I think
How
some of
would
the
you
stores-
phrase that? That's a great idea. I think it's
Probably public perception and education. Because like I said, I still think the same way about not wanting to walk across the street when I can park right here. For all matters, a healthy 42-year-old. It's more of the same thing from last time. Legal seafood, you'll park there, but then you'll walk a half mile over to the Apple store. up at Linfield Marketplace. Why will you do that? Because there's stuff to do along the way. So it is perception. Even from me, I have a different perception as being a business owner as opposed to, somebody that's coming down to eat or whatever. But perception does play into it, because I don't think I'm unique in this example of the way that I do things. It's just letting other people know that we're here to fix something, and potentially, downtown will be better off because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, one of the things I put down on the public input section on my, like four-letter D, is this competitive analysis. And I think it's so critical for the businesses to understand, so it's competitive with contiguous towns and then within town. So am I more likely to go here to CVS or Walgreens where there's lots of free parking? And how does that affect, and if I'm over there, does it mean that I didn't go downtown to do something? And I mean, I'll admit to having, kind of a mental block just with the new Route 28 traffic pattern. I've got a mental block. I mean, I'm a business person. I want to buy and I want to buy and shop local, but just getting on that new 28 route pattern, I'd say I'm just going to do it on my way home from Boston. I'm going to stop and I just drive down Haverhill Street and I won't have to deal with that new traffic pattern. So I think it's having I don't know how we can measure that, but I think it's an important competitive analysis to people have to be attracted to go downtown, and they have to want to go there, and it has to be frictionless for them to kind of go in and out without having a mental block that says, I don't want, it's just too much of a hassle, I'll go somewhere else.
Bernie?
Yes.
Hi, it's Sarah here. I just wanted to, this seems like a really good time to bring back what Jay had mentioned about wanting to also include a sense of place, because what you're talking about, a sense of place could really be enhanced by having safer walkways, because I've had that happen, like when we've done, group activities and we're all gonna meet somewhere, and if you have children with you, you don't feel like you can all safely be going a couple blocks away from where it is you're gonna be going. Whereas if there were safer walkways, if there were maybe like buffer strips, on the sidewalk, just things like that could be incorporated where, I mean, we keep talking about Marketplace in Linfield because it is safe. You can walk safely around those stores, so you don't seem to mind the walk as much. But, but that alleyway that was added, that goes to the CVS parking lot, that I think was a big plus as far as making, more accessible for people to feel like they could park back there and walk around because they had that safe alleyway. They could walk with kids and so forth. So I just think if we keep that in mind, how we can make it safer to walk from parking places, it would only help us. Just wanted to throw that out there.
So thanks for adding that. I think one of the things would be bump outs, which are basically extending the sidewalk into making the crosswalk shorter, and it makes the road narrower so cars slow down. There's a lot of good reasons for it, but shortening the length of the crosswalk is one of them. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I think I'll add that down to like public input, that it would be, I mean, people do talk a lot about that, but maybe I could add that in as like number E under 4, which is walkway. Is it walkways?
Yes.
I don't know, should we include bikeways too? I don't know, because if you could bike safely downtown, I think more people would, but it's not safe to bike downtown from the outer areas of Reading right now.
Is there an initiative going on to make Reading more walkable, bikeable? I feel like I was on a Zoom call about that very thing. Wasn't there something that we broke into groups and some of them were talking about more green space and walkable and?
We talked about that during the zoning workshop in March. I think you were.
Okay. I mean, I feel like it's kind of combined a little bit where, we're talking about parking but at the same time, be mindful of other ways you can make other parts of the town more
Yeah.
accessible for bikes to reduce the amount of cars and things like that.
I mean, I bike down a fair amount, and I just go side roads, and it's just not that many, it's not too bad coming in. I mean, then when I get closer downtown, there's kind of enough, between the traffic lights and everything, you can sort of get where you need to go. I mean,
Sort of.
I don't know, do you
I
have
would-
the same
I mean,
experience?
No, it depends. I mean, there's different levels of bicyclists. You have kind of your strong and enthusiast, or strong and fearless, and kind of your interested but enthused. And but I mean, you think about if you're an 8-year-old,
Yeah, and you have kids, right?
are you gonna have them bike down? That's ultimately what you need for safe biking. You don't have to do too much analysis. Just would you put an 8-year-old on it? Would you put your 8-year-old on it?
Yeah, I mean, and then there's the other thing where you think you're making safe havens for bikes, but then it can be, I mean, I saw somebody skateboarding down Route 28 in the breakdown. And then I mean, shortly after the lanes were cut down and you put this bigger space on the curb, next to the curb on the street, there were a bunch of people walking down, going north on 28, like 4 or 5 across, and one person was walking in the street, and the other people were walking on the sidewalk. And they were walking right in the middle of, I mean, it was right on 28. I mean, this is a busy street. So, I mean, part of it's, you can make things inviting, but then it could actually make things, in that case, skateboarding and walking on Route 28 is not safe. And, so getting it off the main road and allowing the cars to come and go, but allowing the other people to kind of go off the main thoroughfare to where it's safer and quieter. I mean,
So, I mean, when you look at the functions of a road, what do you want the purpose of 28 to be? Do you want it to be a thoroughfare to get people from one place to another, through the town as quickly as possible? Or is it a destination that then they can stop and buy books or go to CVS or whatever? So it depends on what you want the function of the road to be.
I mean, getting in and out efficiently and safely kind of, makes, I'm not sure
But
that
if
this.
it's very attractive, where you are, I mean, think about downtown Portsmouth or even Boston, or just, I mean, there's so many cool places where people don't mind being stuck in traffic because the destination's worth it. Or they don't mind having to walk a little bit because the walk is nice and where they park and whatnot. So that's all. I'm just, just regurgitating what
Yeah, I mean, I think from,
Sarah was saying.
from our perspective, so it's,
Right.
I mean, there's walkway safety, bike safety, then it's skateboard safety, and a lot of other things, so we could, I mean, it's
Yes and
useful.
no.
Well, so I guess we need to,
I mean, the
sorry,
scope of
I'm gonna be the
our,
mom here for a moment, and so let's try to rein this back in. In terms of the purview of this committee,
Yeah,
as much as
sure.
we wanna consider placemaking as we look at the holistic downtown view, but our purview right now is to focus on parking, so kudos to the skateboarders out there, but I don't think we're gonna be solving their problems tonight.
right, yeah, so I mean, I think that's our focus would be on how do we make the parking more, more efficient and so forth, so. But I think as far as walkway safety and other use safety, I mean, we can, I think it'd be useful to gather input from people to
Sure.
see if it has an effect on our charge, which is what recommendations we make on parking.
One quick thing. There's sorts of 3 modes. You have kind of your human powered, human moving,
Yeah.
which is basically sidewalks or, which is running, jogging, all that stuff, walking, pushing a stroller, what have you. Then you have kind of mechanically advanced, mechanical advantage, but human powered, which would be your skateboards, bicyclists, whatever you want, and then that's the bike lane.
Wheelchairs.
And then you're mechanically powered, which would be just the roadway. So
Right.
you can kind of break it up into 3 ways. You don't have to think about skateboard lanes or
Right. Makes
one wheel
sense.
lanes or whatever.
Yeah.
Because people do get hung up on that. Anyways,
So, I guess, I mean, we're kind of talking about about agenda item 4 in some respects. What information do we want to get? How do we want to get it from people? And it would be, I think, useful if we again, a lot of this stuff, some of it is already in prior efforts. And the question is, can we expand it and get a maximum amount of input from people on a maximum amount of subjects to sort of understand the problem well enough so that we can make some, reasonably cogent recommendations, or recommendations based on kind of the maximum input from so many people.
I think a big thing for number 4 that we should definitely take advantage of is the street fair. So since that's on September 12th and it's downtown, and you're gonna get a hopefully massive influx of Reading residents going down there. I don't know if the town is gonna have a booth or what the scenario is, but just a quick fill out a survey that we could come up with some questions on or whatever, and then that's
September what?
essentially September 12th.
12th.
12 to 5.
To implement that, one potential way to do that would be using like a tiny URL. I don't know if you're familiar at all with that, but you can create your own custom like tinyurl.com/PARC Reading, for instance. And then, or whatever you want it to be. And then it can like link to like a Survey Monkey. And then you can just have a few questions in there, or
I think it's more of getting the people when they're there to actually do it, because most people aren't gonna care until it impacts them. I think making it as easy as possible, if we already had some predetermined questions that we wanted answers to, 30 seconds, someone fills out something and we're done so. I know for me, if I was walking around and someone wanted me to do a survey in Drake, where I used to live, like, I wouldn't really care. But like, this being downtown, we're talking about the exact area where this is all gonna be, to not take advantage of that for almost free at this point. It seems like we'd be able to do a lot with it.
Yeah, I think but I think, Jay, your point, but having those questions, if you could have a Q code, right, where at a booth downtown, or even at all the businesses downtown, give us your recommendations, you zap that, and a lot of people might, and it would, quite frankly, be a lot easier to tabulate that data than
Right.
going through, but there's no
It's
reason
just
we
in
shouldn't be doing.
conjunction.
Give
It's
the
just-
option. Just be doing
yeah,
both.
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
doing-
you don't do
yeah.
one.
I think Chris is right, we should have an analog option
Yeah.
and an
Any and
online.
all, yeah.
Yeah.
Easy enough to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
The more
That's an awesome idea.
the more free feedback, essentially free feedback, the better, because mentioning this, sending it out on the mailings, like the water bill or stuff that gets sent out regularly from us, I understand that, but just something like that is, with everybody actually being right then and there, just seems like this couldn't have come at a better time.
Do we have prior questionnaires that have been used?
Yeah, we did a downtown parking survey just a couple of years ago, actually.
So we could probably piggyback on that,
Before the
maybe?
pandemic. Yeah, we did it through Survey Monkey, I think, and we might have had a QR code, and I'll have to look, but we have a pretty standard way of like doing outreach that continues to expand, actually. We keep adding new ways
Yeah.
to do it
Right.
every time we do something. So we can get that out. We just need to know what the content is, what the questions are.
do you have the results for those? For that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all in the
Is it all in the
stuff
thing?
that,
Oh,
Yeah,
shoot.
I think it is probably all in
Yeah.
there. Probably the January 2020.
Yeah.
Is that right? All my years are messed up. Yeah, January 2020 presentation, I think. Let's do the summary of the data.
and if you still have the survey questions in existence.
Yeah.
Revise.
Then we can just look at it and see if we need to revise them, and it seems like a good idea to have a physical document that people could respond to at the street fair, and frankly, speaking for downtown businesses, I'm sure we'd all be happy to just keep some in our businesses too over time. And then we could keep the online version of the survey open for as long as we wanna have data being collected, right? We could put it up tomorrow and just keep going.
You could always put an iPad out there too, or someone can carry around if someone wanted to loan one out.
I think Sarah volunteered,
What's so
didn't
nice
she?
about that is that you're asking people that have traveled to the downtown area for the fair. So they've just experienced parking somewhere most likely. So, or they walked or they rode their bikes. So the data is so relevant.
Actually, it's a great day to ask people because they actually usually will have walked a little further and thought nothing of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point of
Your
a,
results.
of a lot of destinations.
Yeah.
People do, once they're there to walk, they'll walk. But yeah, I asked Bob, and I think Jean and Julie got the note. So I asked Bob Luckower if he could put us in touch with people at the school, as well as the Department of Public Works. Maybe we could get some post or some collections where we could stuff a bunch of brochures in there and people, we could put them near the parking. That might be a big ask, but it's possible if we could put those things near where people are already parking and get a QR code so they could buzz that, or take this and, I don't know how, maybe we could have a Dropbox where they can take a survey, put it back, and then we could collect those. We could get students potentially to help out, maybe students at the town fair could work. Bob was concerned about, COVID contact. I guess we'd have to make sure that we wouldn't jeopardize anybody, but if they did, they would have to obviously have parental permission. That might not work, it might work. Could be a civic lesson for some enterprising civic students, but having all the businesses have the stuff in
I think we'd get 80% of our survey results on that day, and then the 20% would just be randomness from other days. But I think a bulk majority with everybody knowing they're going there, like you mentioned parking. I know when I came last time, I parked on some side street all the way over there, and I walked, and I did not think two ways about it. I'm like, I'm happy I found a parking spot, and now I don't want to.
Just gotta take that mentality
That's
there
it.
every day.
Every day. I will abstain from the.
The only question I'd have, Chris, on what you're talking about is, in the rest, is the survey, would you deem it electronic
Both.
at that booth or paper? And if it's gonna be paper, how's the tab, I'm sure the town has enough work on its hands. I mean, how does it get tabulated? Is it our responsibility to tabulate it, or?
I think
How do
that
we get
the
the
way that
results?
it would work is a majority of people would want to do it electronically, scan it with their phone while they're there with the QR code. It brings up the site, and they can just, as long as it's easy and fast enough for people to not just be like, I'll do this later. As long as we make it easy and fast enough, more people are apt to do it. So using my 80-20 thing again, it's probably 80% would just do it that way as opposed to 20% just filling it out by hand. So I don't think we'd have this massive influx of stuff that you just have to retabulate after. It's more of just having it there for some people that don't have access to the computers or just want help with maybe the questions at that time. Just having the option, even though we know it probably won't be utilized as much, but you're still having it available. And just making it super easy in either option, making it super easy. Then maybe we could have an in-depth one that gets mailed out to people, maybe we don't. But whatever we do, we're gonna get a majority of feedback on that day. So I'm sure we all can come up with something that's gonna.
And that will help, but then again, it won't necessarily get to everybody
Correct.
who's a user, the commuters might not be there that day. or-
Well, it's a typical day also.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we need to have the survey open for an extended period of time. And I
Yeah.
think the analog solution, have it in downtown businesses so that people can pick up a survey if they're downtown.
I mean, I've got,
I agree, I think that day would be, I've experienced it as we all have in the past, and I don't know if it was pre-COVID, but what the COVID numbers will be, but I think they'll be up there, but I was thinking, and I know it's been addressed, if we can get some senior project, someone looking for someone to help out as far as if there are some paper tabulations, because I'll speak for the senior population that some of us aren't as electronically friendly as we still live in the paper world.
so you're not talking about senior in high school, you're talking about,
I'm talking about senior by age.
We always have to have the option because sometimes I might even like to fill things out like that. Just having a pen and paper here is night and day compared to using my computer all the time, so.
We better get moving on
Jane?
that, cause only a few
If
weeks.
I could,
Yeah.
I just wanted to weigh in because we have done a lot of surveys in the 12 years that I've been here. And we do find having multiple platforms very helpful. And if you're trying to get at a user experience in downtown for people who regularly come downtown, you may not get that the day of the Fall Street Fair. Because lots of people come from outside of Reading.
exactly.
That may not be but it still may be, they still may be familiar with it, and that could be valuable data. So obviously, depending on how you design the survey, you'll be able to glean out the results based on how you ask the questions. But I also want to give a shout out to our wonderful Pleasant Street Center. They not only would appreciate paper surveys, a lot of them, and a lot of times we do that, we make them available at the Pleasant Street Center for other surveys that we've done, the post office, that type of thing. But we also have property tax workers that are a resource as well. The town has had a view about how we use volunteers, and I'll defer to the town manager, and he'll probably weigh in on that, but I have serious concerns about safety in putting students in the CVS parking lot to collect data, only because my window overlooks the CVS parking lot, and it is not a safe environment for young people to be, otherwise trying to collect data and be very helpful. So whatever we do, safety first.
I think to Jean's point, that should be the first question on the survey. Are you a regular, are you a daily user of downtown, or however we put that? That seems like the biggest thing, because then you're gonna have one block of data with that and one block with the other. And you can see maybe if they line up, what is your perception about downtown? I think that's a good first question right on the survey.
You know, on my outline, number 4, you know, A and B, so it's like, we need to advertise ourselves as a forum for users and stakeholders of Reading Park to encourage these, you know, to attend them, our meetings and so forth, and how do we get that word out? And I just listed a whole bunch of things, but we've already added a bunch of stuff here, but, you know, traditional media, I think we, you know, if we can get the word out through the local papers, social media. I'm not very active at all on social media, so I don't know how we would, you know, but if we could get a link to a survey and get it out on social media, I don't know what the issues are there, but, and the outbound, you know, these red call, I'm not sure if I would want to call it a red alert call, but,
Just to,
but, you know, if we could just, so you see the points that I'm trying to make there on, you know, use of students, flyers, brochures. And the brochures could be placed at all the different parking locations so that it could be there. Now, I don't know if it's gonna really, I don't know if we're gonna be able to put a whole bunch of brochures out. It would be nice if we could, but it would be more easy if we could collect it electronically.
Maybe a QR code on the actual sign that's already there for all the parking lots.
Yeah.
I don't,
And do we have a site, can people email our committee in some way, or to the site? How does that work?
right now, there's not a separate email set up for you guys, but people can email you through me. I did just wanna pause for a minute and go back to a survey that we did less than 2 years ago. We had 1,538 respondents. We asked a lot of questions about how people get downtown, how long they stay downtown, what kinds of businesses they patronize when they're downtown, whether they find the downtown accessible. I don't know to what extent this survey might already cover some of the things you're looking for, but it was right before the pandemic. It's pretty recent, and there was a huge effort that we had staff down at the train platform handing out the QR codes. We got over 1,500 responses to the survey. So if it's helpful to this effort, I can try to go through and like pull out some of the things that I think might directly relate to some of the questions that you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get that survey, that would probably give us starting point. It may be what we
And the
need, it
data
may,
that she has.
yeah, and the data as well,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
now.
There's a ton of data, and
Yeah.
we also did an downtown business parking survey, which is the one we did actually maybe around the same time as this one. Where we specifically targeted the businesses and asked them about how many employees they have on their largest shift, how they find the employee permit parking program working. We got a lot of data through that as well. So it's all like just pre-pandemic data.
So that's the time frame we really need to focus on anyway.
Yeah,
Because
Mm.
that's
More reality-based.
Maybe we don't need to do another survey. Can you pin those to the park page, Julie? So we could find them?
It's in one of your, wasn't it in one of your presentations? I
Yeah,
thought I saw that.
so Reimagine
Yeah.
Reading is what we called the survey where we got 1,500 responses, and that one's on the economic development page. I can send this around to all of you after, and then the business parking survey that we did is on the page that I sent you already. It was in the it's summarized in the January 21st presentation, I think. So I can send you those.
Yeah, I think, if I recall, maybe you can explain, was there a lot of input from how people are using it, do they use it for commuting? You know, like if we, were those use cases also in the survey? I can't remember.
So we asked people like why they come downtown, like, so we have right here, how do you get downtown?
Right.
So how do you get there, why do you come? I can't.
How long do you stay?
Yeah,
Yes.
lots of stuff like that. So we can look through and see if we're answering your questions with this information.
Yeah, I definitely remember, I just don't remember all the details of all the various questions. So I think if we start there, and then we can expand it. I mean, obviously, we've been charged with getting more input, so even though you've got a lot of input, and there was a lot of input by this other committee back in 08 and 09, you know, we probably should at least provide, that would be useful, I think, just to provide a time series of, you know, how the needs may have changed over time. Looking at it 08, 09, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic is sort of what we're looking
We're not post-pandemic.
into the, not quite yet.
Mid.
I mean, we're planning for post-pandemic, we're not, I didn't mean to say that we're post-pandemic tonight, but for sure.
No,
it's-
but for post-pandemic, to pick up on that, I would strongly suggest that the committee pick up on Chris's suggestion that we take a booth, talk to whoever is organizing, I think it's the Rotary, for the fair, and make sure we do get a booth down there. And I'd like to strongly suggest that we put that in action and have somebody have information, and that would give us, as we're talking about, some post-pandemic information, because I think there's gonna be probably not crowds of old, but at least we'll get a large number of people responsive to.
Yeah, I was also suggesting that we could reach out to the Rotary, they could get it out to their members, the chamber. I know Lisa Egan has done some stuff, probably redundant to what you're talking about. The group that you're talking, that you were, was it the business?
So Julia, so
EID or-
when the parking committee or whatever it was worked before, like they marched around to all, you
Yeah.
can probably remember Dan and Tom, it came to, I mean, we were asked.
Yeah, I think there's something like 50, we talked to 55 businesses in person. There's a lot of it's all documented, the efforts.
But yeah, and so I think on the one hand, we have a lot of the information. On the other hand, half the reason this committee exists is just the perception of have people been asked enough. So we just need to keep asking them so that people feel like they've been asked enough.
And and I think from some perspectives, the people downtown, the residents and the businesses downtown were asked and surveyed, and there's a lot of data on that. It's just a question of whether the people outside that group, the commuters, the people from other towns that come here, those people, I don't think that we have a lot of input from. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, is that?
I think they were included in the Reimagine Reading survey.
Yeah, we got a lot. It wasn't just Reading residents responding to that survey. It was people who drive into town and use the commuter rail. It was a whole range of people. And we asked that question, like,
Okay.
people can identify themselves within the survey, so.
All right.
But yeah, there's no reason not to ask it again. I mean, that's part of what our charge is to solicit input one more time.
Because we may learn that things have shifted since the pandemic, that we're still in, but not in, but still in. So in terms of parking, it's definitely different between before and now, with new buildings going up all over the place, et cetera. So it is good, especially when it's, like I said, almost next to nothing to be able to get all this. It would be, kind of silly for us not to do it. But to your point, leave it up. As long as we have the questions laid out, like I said, streamlined, super easy. First question with how Gene brought it up, and then we'll have this data, and maybe it's massively different than 2020. Maybe it's the same, and then we know to go forward, We base all the data, has been the same this whole way. Why do we think something else has to be done when it's all showing this direction?
And to your point, showing the trends over time, I think starting with, yeah, definitely, again, asking you, can we look at your previous survey and use that as our jumping off point? Because if we can reuse it as close to how it originally was, then we'll see, you know, are people responding to the same questions the same way? And if there's anything missing, then obviously we add it, but also just an efficiency. It already exists.
I think we need to add some questions that, because if you ask someone now, we don't, there is no real parking issue half the time, because all.
If you ask someone now, they will complain just as much as
They will complain, they will,
do.
absolutely, but when you, like, the train station, there's nobody parking there during the day. So in reality, sure, all the employees can park down there and there'd be open up parking everywhere. So I think we have to be mindful of how the answers we get now, because people are in the middle of it, may not necessarily be what they're gonna be a year from now. And so I think the data that you all collected is core data, and we can see what's going on, but we have to really be mindful that a year or two from now, when all these buildings are done, it's gonna be a whole different ballgame. And we don't even know what those new buildings are gonna bring, because they're not here yet. And some of them are still under construction, and they're supposed to have parking underground, but who knows? So I think maybe add a little additional question in there, like, have you come downtown in the last 2 months? Or, or do you not come downtown? Or is it more enjoyable now to come downtown than it was a year ago? I think it's kind of a little bit of a different spin on some of the questions, just to kind of, I don't know, it'll be tricky.
We may have, Julie, I'm sorry to keep leaning on you and all the things you've already done. As part of because you've been involved, the local rapid recovery program, you guys did some surveys with exactly that kind of question, right?
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. And actually, Andrew just sent me the same reminder. We did a survey recently.
Right, which asked, the reason it triggered is I'm like, when you said that out loud, I'm like, I have seen that on a survey in very recent weeks and months.
Okay, yeah, so we
Oh,
have a lot of that information too. So we can get this all for you and put it in a hopefully digestible format.
So is there a comment section on the survey where like other comments and that people could just fill out like their opinion on something, or was that?
Generally speaking, we do have a couple open-ended questions on surveys.
And how likely was somebody to actually fill that in?
So for the Reimagine Reading one, we got a ton of that, and it all just like spit out in a spreadsheet, like one line at a time, and we went through it and we tried to categorize it based on like what it was.
So people are actively participating
Yeah,
in this,
there's a-
because that's going an extra step instead of just clicking away at yes, no, 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 and just answering the thing just to get it over with.
Yeah.
That requires an additional step.
I
So,
think a well-designed survey has closed-end and open-end questions, and, because you want to evoke that response.
Right.
See if we can- Maybe we could just try to start to summarize the meeting and see if we can establish some to-do items for the next couple of things. Anybody have suggestions? The other idea was, can we analyze, what data can we analyze? There are, so on number 5, it doesn't sound like the financial analysis is incredibly complicated on this, but we might be able to gather some information like the revenues, according to what Bob said last time, revenues from parking are really not material to kind of everything the town does. So I guess the only other question is what can we learn from what data we do have? In other words, we sound like we have sticker sales. So can we, who would we ask? Jean?
There's a note on the website that a number of the parking permits were not issued I believe it's in this current year, in 2021. They just didn't bother issuing. So I don't know what kind of data they'll have for permits.
So I was thinking, can we get a time series? Now, can we go back, how long can we go back and see how many people bought resident stickers? How many commercial businesses bought commercial stickers? Obviously, that hasn't been around long enough. But can we just get those
So
Those
you're
data and the
talking about
trends?
the employee parking.
employee
but-
parking, but then also the resident stickers, and then like Sarah was saying, there are some stickers that have been issued that people don't have to pay for. Can we get, and anything else that we might be able to get to, because that would give us clear data on who's using it, or somebody's actually paid money to buy these stickers. Can we get that? I mean, who would we?
We can try to get some of it. I think it might be, you might want to analyze it from a different viewpoint though, right? Like the money isn't the reason that we do
No, that's-
these things, but
I'm talking about the volume. I just want to know
right,
the volume of
to know the volume
stickers.
and to
Yeah,
understand the demand for those different types of
right.
permits, I think would be.
But yeah, I mean, we had, but then there was a change in the pricing of the residence stickers, so it would be useful to know, whether that impacted how many stickers were issued before and after that change, as an example. Just to sort of, and then are we selling more stickers, for instance, than we have spaces for? Now, you obviously probably want to do that, except that if everybody shows up and they have a sticker, but now I can't get a space, well, but like some people aren't going to take the train every day, I mean, but.
I have a question right along what you're talking about, Bernie. Maybe Julie knows the answer. So in the case of a 40R where the parking is, I think it's 1.25 per unit, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you have a 30-unit building with 1.25, we'll round it up, that's 38 stickers. So because 40R has that special deal with the decreased parking and all that, are we going to monitor that building only gets 38 parking stickers? Like, what would stop those residents from getting 2 cars, getting 2 stickers and just parking it on the street?
So I don't know that they currently get stickers, Sarah. I mean, there's not necessarily, I think if they went in and applied, they could have one, but it's not like they just get handed a sticker when they move in. And I also, we did look into whether we might look at the sticker program differently depending on the type of building downtown, and I think that we discovered that it might not actually be legal for us to do that. So to be continued, we can talk about it more, but I'm not.
Yeah, because if the whole point of giving them all this increased density in exchange for, because they're going to be using the train, and so then therefore it's less parking, they don't have to supply more parking. It doesn't seem like, how could it be illegal to enforce that?
I think
Like,
that
why would
I do
that
have
criteria
data.
have been made?
I do have data on utilization for all the multifamily and mixed-use buildings downtown on the parking utilization. And there are no buildings right now that currently exceed the capacity of parking that they have. There's actually some that have extra spaces that they're allowing the commercial tenants to use. So
I'm talking about the 40R, just the 40R.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Like
about.
the to be determined. I mean, I know we have a couple of them already in action, but
that's what I'm talking about, the 40R projects. And actually I have data for all the other multifamily buildings that are not technically 40R projects as well. It was shown at the zoning workshop that we did.
okay, so so it is going to be tracked, how many stickers are given to residents in those 40R.
Well, that's not exactly what I just said, but anyway, yeah.
So
It sounds like thus far it's a non-issue, that they aren't fully utilizing the parking that they have yet.
That's my understanding, yes.
well, I think what she's saying is that on the properties, they're not using it, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't get stickers and use on-street parking.
They could, but it seems very unlikely that you're handed your own parking space in your building and you're gonna say, ha-ha, I'm gonna
Unless you
park on
get-
the street
Unless you
instead.
get two, unless you had to pay for the parking on the lot. Because I think the Postmark building, at least from talking to Tom Connery, who built it, I think he said that they had to pay for that space.
Or you get a sticker, park outside, and then rent your sticker or your spot in the private to somebody that wants to commute in.
Sold.
Well, also the parking spots are
Happens.
something like 40 and 50% compact. So it's not really easy to zip in and squeeze into your compact spot. I mean, you could just park on the street, or, you know, say, or you don't get a compact, you trade your compact car in for a sedan, or
I guess I
Or
just don't
necessary.
know, I don't know if we can treat certain residents of the downtown different than other residents of the downtown. I think that's where we would need some legal counsel if we were gonna propose something like that. It gets complicated.
Okay,
But
well,
the-
I guess that my question would be, why would we have given reduced parking then if we weren't gonna have that be meaningful?
Well, right now, our utilization data that we have shows that they're not exceeding the parking capacity that they have on site. So maybe the reduced parking ratio is justified.
But I
But
think.
you don't know if they're parking on the street or parking in a lot. I mean, just because you count how many cars are in the garage doesn't mean how many stickers there are. How many cars are belonging to people in that building.
So I
Well,
mean,
we
I
do know in
got-
the winter they can't park
I
overnight,
did,
so.
yes, I also did get the information directly from the property managers and property owners who know their residents and tenants. And who know the license plates that belong to their tenants. So, you know, I feel fairly confident in the information that I have.
I guess I thought there were two questions. So there's the one question is, are there enough spaces for the residents in the building? But then there's the separate issue, which is how many resident stickers have been issued that allow people to park in the resident-only spaces in the various streets around there. That has nothing to do with how many people are I mean, you might have an intersection between those two, but that's all. I thought that's what Sarah was trying to get at. Like how many resident parking stickers, not the compost and resident stickers. So I think if we could get the data on both of those items, both revenue and volume of stickers as a time series over time, that would, and then the question is, it sounds like we need to get the number of residential units that have been constructed in town to understand how many parking spaces are being designated for those residents. And then probably we need a forecast of those under development to know how much we should be projecting for. Did you have a comment, Chris?
Yeah, I will say it's hard to believe what Julie is actually saying is true, but I know firsthand or secondhand that what she's saying is true, that the residential buildings are renting out to commercial spots underneath, all of their extra spots. So it does seem weird to believe that that's actually taking place, but that is actually taking place. So it kind of leads into the example of who's the parking issue? If commercial people are now using residential spots underneath buildings.
Say that again, I'm not totally familiar with the issue. So you're saying
So
that,
a 40R building has to have the 1.25 car for underneath it.
right,
But if they only have 60 spots and there's 20 cars, the management company will then rent out the other 40 spots to commercial people that are willing to park there.
okay.
So then
Downtown businesses or
to anybody that wants.
residents, or like, could I rent one of those spots or?
There is a
Is it
waiting list
personal?
that you will not be getting onto said waiting list, but there's a waiting.
Because
list.
there's so many people that are
Yes.
willing to buy, okay. So we have a secondary market in parking
We
spaces.
have a secondary,
Okay.
we have the.
But it sounds like it's unlikely that residents of these buildings are
Correct.
causing a street parking problem.
It seems as if commercial people seem to be taking these spots for some unknown reason.
Can we find out why they're using them? I mean, that should be a survey among,
But we know why they're using them. I think the question is, why are they available?
well, I think part of that reason would be the people move in there that don't have cars because they access
Right?
the
Because
T,
the
obviously.
buildings are behaving the way they're intended.
Right.
They're available because the zoning laws for parking should be less. They should have less spots per, there's too much parking available in this world.
I wouldn't start saying that.
That is if
Um,
the building's fully occupied as well, so if
There's
the
some
building's not
information
fully
on the
occupied.
screen. It's probably really hard to read from where you are, but this is where I track. I have it broken down by what type of space it is, how big it is. And then for every single multifamily building downtown. 40Rs, 40Bs, ones that predated 40R and 40B. Then over here, how many units are in the building? How many are 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds? Are the spaces garage? Are they surface? What's the total? Are they bundled with the unit or not? So does it come automatically with the unit, or does someone have to buy it separately if they want it? Or lease it separately if they want it? How many are used for the residential portion of the building? How many are used for the commercial portion of the building? How many are unused? Some of the buildings, when I got this data earlier this year, were unused still. And that's partly because, some of them, schoolhouse condos completely full, but 15 unused spaces there, according to the data I got from the property management company and the trustees at that building. So I also have it broken down to figure out what percentage percent of 1 bedroom units in a building that use 0 cars, percent of 1 bedroom units in a building that use 1 car, to try to figure out what the actual demand is based on bedrooms in these units. So
Does this also indicate the occupancy of those buildings?
like how many people actually are in the buildings?
Yeah, I mean, is it like half the apartments are rented and half of them are empty, or is it all 100%
Yeah, so I do have
occupancy?
notes about whether they're full or not. So a couple of them had some vacant units at the time I got this data. I have in one of the buildings for the residents who don't have cars. This is all data I got from the property management companies and building owners. So
And then
This might be helpful
when
to
it
your
says,
efforts.
and when it says rental or for sale, what does that mean? Is that the units in the
It's a
building
condo.
themselves or
right,
the?
so that means if it's a rental building or a condo building, right? So Postmark is a condo building, so it's a for sale building.
And where would it indicate whether they have to pay for their spaces or they're for free, or they come with a unit?
So if they're bundled, they come with the unit. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a small fee attached to them though. And then, if they're unbundled, like in Postmark, for example, I guess Postmark bundles 1, every unit gets 1, and then additional, if they want additional, they have to buy them.
That's what okay.
Yeah.
Do they purchase them or rent them?
At Postmark, they purchase them.
Okay.
At other places, it's like at the building I live in a condo building in Arlington, and those of us that have extra spaces that we don't need, we rent them to our neighbors who want them. So, I own it, but I can rent it, right? So that happens too.
Is there anything there for visitor parking? What does the
do have-
Postmark do for
Yeah, I
visitors?
do have a column here for visitor, a
Okay.
column for handicap, a column for EV charging, trying to compact, regular, trying to capture it all. Sorry.
That's a lot of data.
Gee, Julie,
Thank you.
it's a shame that you have no attention to detail whatsoever.
This is a Friday night for her.
So is that part of a larger data set that you have that helps us to analyze all this?
What larger data do you want than what you're seeing there?
No, I mean, this has to do with residences and obviously businesses. I know you have data on that.
I have data on commercial square footage change downtown over time and how the burden has changed on the municipal lots,
Yeah, I
which was
remember.
also presented at the zoning workshop. So I am happy to share all this with you if it's helpful to your efforts. And it's 2021 information. It's
Mhm.
pretty fresh too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could get a total data dump from you of parking related stuff, I know you've got a gazillion stuff aside from parking. And I think that would get us a long way to, giving us information for number 5, which is how do we analyze this? Because I think a lot of the misinformation on parking is just that people don't really know what we have and how much is available and how much is not available. So the more we educate ourselves about that and analyze it, the more helpful I think it'll be for us to communicate and educate the rest of the public about it. So and then is it important for us to look at the costs to the town? I know I've heard on some of the seminars, that there's an enforcement cost, do we have to take a a parking person who goes out and gives tickets. I know, if you don't have a sticker at the train station, you get a parking ticket. I believe that's issued by the police department. So there's obviously a cost for that. There are infrastructure costs. Do we have to maintain parking spaces, paint stripes, plow them? There's the maintenance of plowing, and I know that there's something related to the MBTA spaces where I don't know that we own all the spaces, do we, near the train station? I know there's that one lot where people have to pay, but I think that's an MBTA lot, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then
Here's the map right here.
Yeah, and there's a map right here, regulations of what the town owns versus what we don't own. Actually, let me find the legend, it's at the bottom, or is it at the top? It's at the top. So just so you know what you're looking at. This isn't anything. Actually, yes, so the purple is MBTA and then the red is resident parking, so. The MBTA owns this lot here.
The purple.
Yeah, and the town owns the spaces all along High Street,
And we also have rights to Vine Street.
right? So, let me just.
Where's Vine Street
Right
on
up
this?
here.
We have a license from the MBTA to operate our own parking on Vine Street. 68 spaces, I think.
Let me see what that was.
Where is that?
Vine Street?
Yeah, right
And
here,
that's-
Vine Street is right here. So this is High Street goes, and then Vine Street goes off like this.
Okay,
And then these spaces here that are light blue were recently changed. So they were the leased spaces. We had, I think, 41 leased spaces here. And the select board took away the leasing program, and now these are 2-hour or employee permit spaces. So,
Those are all revenue generating spaces.
It's all the, if you have a town sticker, you can park at any of these.
You
Yes, you pay
for
for a permit,
You pay
yes.
for it, okay, so the revenue, all right.
the other aspect I thought of the MBTA arrangement is that because we have a train station, we get some different rate on, there's something to do with aid that comes into the town that's either lower or higher because we have a train station. I'm not sure if that affects the parking or not, or there are conditions. You don't remember, you don't,
That MBTA parking lot that you see in purple is nothing to do with the town. They plow it, they maintain it, they collect revenue for it. I think it's all off of an app. I have no idea what the utilization is since COVID.
Hmm.
But certainly, we know that everything is way down, and I
Yeah.
think maybe we discussed how the T is so way off. It's,
yeah, pre-COVID, there were very few spaces available for commuters. I mean, that was definitely an issue because you had a lot of commuters parking on all the various side streets. So I guess what I'm thinking about is that the town, I believe, gets lower state aid because we have a train station. I might have it wrong, but I think it's lower state aid because we have a train station, and that provides our residents access to the commuter rail. But I don't know that that's. I just don't know whether that arrangement is impacted by having any parking established for the commuters. I think it would be useful to just make sure we understand that if there is an issue. So I guess I would say next steps would, if we could get the data dump from Julie to analyze as much as we can, get the survey questions. Can we get the raw data on on the parking surveys, as opposed to, just a summary? I mean, I don't know if it's possible to look at some of that.
You want the Excel file? Like the Survey Monkey spit out?
What
Yeah.
contains that?
We'll take the summary too, but
Yeah, the summary
Yeah.
is useful, but,
We spent a lot of time
We know.
parsing that out, like, you've seen what I do. Okay.
okay. And then if maybe we could, I asked Bob the question about asking if we could, have the open meeting law regulations, because it would be useful for us to be able to say, okay, we can, you give us some data, a bunch of us, look at it. It would be useful if we could share our thoughts with each other on that.
That's a no-no.
Yeah.
That's a violation.
And what are the consequences of that? I guess that's what I'm confused
You're a
about.
public body and you have to do everything in public.
Right,
If it constitutes a quorum, it's a violation.
right. But if we had, because we have this park website, for lack of a better term, but if all of our communications were posted to that, would that satisfy the?
You
No,
can't-
because it's deliberation.
any kind of exchange is considered deliberation, whether it's on the website.
I thought we had to do everything here.
You do,
Yes.
that's my point.
But do we have to
That's
have
right.
a physical meeting in order to satisfy the open
Yeah.
meeting?
yes.
That's what you have to do.
Yes.
But like you and I can talk about it, or you and Dan
As
can
long
talk
as it's
about
not a quorum.
Mhm.
And you can work with staff.
Right.
So we can talk.
We're gonna get together every day and talk.
Secretary of State, I think is where all the open meeting law,
Yeah,
I think we have something on the town
Town
website.
clerk has a bunch of information as well.
Yeah, if you go to the town clerk's
Let me see if I
page,
can.
there's a lot of information there.
In order to have a meeting where we communicated with one another, we'd have to advertise that with an agenda 2 days before the meeting, and that's part of
Somebody
the,
has to take minutes.
let me just take
The
minutes.
minutes have to be submitted as well, yeah.
Even
Okay.
if you were to break up into subcommittees, that also requires public posting and minutes.
Okay, I was just trying to facilitate the efficiency of getting things done so that the next time we meet, we actually have something, accomplished, so,
If I could make a suggestion,
Please.
we have already programmed out the rest of the calendar year with public meetings, and a lot of dates are already taken. So my suggestion would be to get a meeting schedule in place, because, as I say, we've got 16 public meetings this fall. And it's nothing to say it can't be on the same night. Julie and I can divide up the work and go to different meetings, but just to keep that in mind.
so would you suggest we do that now or do another one of these?
I would suggest
Rules.
you establish a meeting calendar. I think that's very important.
I think we discussed different days that
Yeah.
were, of course, let's see, we don't have,
John,
John's not here. Why don't I have John?
Sarah has a conflict on Tuesdays.
yeah,
But she still can meet remotely, though? Is that the
No,
deal?
once-
Only for like a
Right,
half an
oh,
hour or
oh,
something,
yeah, yeah.
maybe.
you have a good memory.
I may not remember my kids' names.
Yeah, I copied our members from the thing, but I guess I must have somehow,
John and Chris, you wanna add as well. I didn't see him on the list.
right? Okay. I thought I copied everybody. Not, obviously, I didn't get it on my apologies for not including them on this document. Okay, so, you said, Sarah, Tuesdays are not good at all, right? Is it every Tuesday?
Yes. Yeah, just, next Tuesday is available, but then, after that, they're not good for me.
Okay, and it's every Tuesday, not like every
Yeah.
other Tuesday, okay.
Yeah.
Mondays, did we,
I'm your Monday problem.
And
Okay.
CBDC meets on
Wednesdays?
What was that?
Mondays. CBDC too.
I think we should do a doodle poll or some sort of a poll. I think that was supposed to be an action item from last time.
Well, we did
Well,
that
that
for
was
this
to
meeting.
get this meeting, but I think Jean's point is we shouldn't walk out of this room tonight without a plan or we're doomed.
I agree.
Planners are like that.
So Wednesdays, we have to talk to, the only person we need to talk to is John. Does anybody know John's schedule enough to comment whether Wednesdays? CPDC meetings, you said were when, Jean?
Mondays.
Mondays?
I mean, I think if there's something that works for the 8 of you, we can run it by John and see. I think his schedule might vary week to week. That's the sense I get, because I know he sometimes travels for work or has night commitments for work, plus a family and, all the
Yeah.
stuff. So,
So it sounds like maybe put a Wednesday stake in the ground and
yeah, and
then
then we can just see
go
Are
from
you
there.
talking about Wednesday, the 25th?
I think we're talking about Wednesdays.
in
Oh,
general.
broadly, okay.
Yeah.
I like Wednesdays too, that works for me.
Wednesday.
I don't like Wednesdays, but I will acquiesce to the rest of the group.
Thursdays any better?
It's probably the
Thursdays. bad.
Thursday's bad for the town
We
folks
we
already
a
have.
problem with
millions
Thursdays
of
as a
meetings.
rule. I'm committed to the Board of Health on Thursday nights.
Yeah, I don't think they have anything going on, right?
What's that?
Board of Health, no.
And the frequency, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I mean,
We've got a lot of data to go through.
yeah, that's why I'm not sure if it means, that, initially we get the data, we look at it, we analyze it, and then obviously we have to get something done if we want to get things out for September 12th for this town fair to get surveys. We'd want to get our survey, presumably we piggyback on what you've already done, revise it as we see fit. Then we've got to get it somehow uploaded onto a website. Do we have access to somebody that can help us with
I mean, it's
that?
easy enough to, I can do a SurveyMonkey or a Google form
Yeah,
easily.
right.
I would propose we meet every other Wednesday. There.
And then,
We only have
That's
one
my
more
thought.
meeting until the,
that's
South
that's,
Street Fair, right?
right, exactly.
So if we
we
met
have to-
September 1st, would be 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Opening day of school.
That's true.
School opens before Labor Day?
Yeah, it usually does here.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
And Labor Day
since
also happens
I
to be
had
late
deal
this
with
week. So if-
September 15th is Yom Kippur. It's a Jewish holiday that we try and encourage boards not to meet during the Jewish holidays, especially the high holidays.
Which day were you, that's later,
September
right?
15th, so that would be the
September
next.
15th.
Yeah, I think if we, September 1st, if we could nail that down so that we can, that would give us an opportunity to get our survey done, maybe some analysis that we could all look at the work that Julie's already done and maybe report
Julie and I
back.
won't be here on the 1st, but we would suggest that maybe some other staff get involved, maybe some, especially when you're talking about things like parking sticker revenue and all that, that really is the police department. So if the board wants to dip into other staff resources.
Is there somebody on the financials, the financial department that might have access to that, to those numbers that could help us? Is that,
Yeah, I mean, there's the town accountant, there's.
right?
But I'm thinking for that September 1st meeting, it sounds like the priority is focusing on the survey
Survey, yeah.
and getting that.
So I don't think we need to
Reviewing.
have the final.
So I wouldn't want to bring another department in and be like, sit here while we discuss this survey and then.
For the
first, for
purpose of
September
taking
1st.
minutes on the first.
You may be surprised by how the data is now old, because we have not been doing a lot of these permits during the COVID.
No, I know, that's why
It
I
may be
figured
just easier to just get a report.
getting a time series of it, which, because the last couple of years, we're probably not gonna be in.
But we're allowed to meet without you on September 1st, yes?
Yes, yes.
Is Bob available on September 1st?
I can't speak for Bob, I don't have his calendar.
I mean, we have the parking traffic transportation task force is more than just me and Jean and Andrew and Bob. There might be somebody on that who could help, or I think like you seem very capable, and if you wanna meet without staff and report back, what I really want for you is for you to be able to find a date that works for all of you. And then we can figure out whether we have a room available or if it needs to be Zoom, whether we have a staff person who can come. And if those things don't always align, I think that's okay, because we're here and you can report back to me the next day and let me know what kind of action items and what was the discussion and what were the thoughts and any questions and things to follow up on. You know, obviously we'll try to get staff for you when we can, but like if there's a time you need to meet and we're not all available, or, you know, that doesn't mean that you can't.
So if we met the 1st and then the 22nd would be after the town fair, so maybe we have some initial.
We're at another meeting.
I'll be
that
running
night.
a big community forum that night.
22nd?
The
That's
22nd.
okay, Green Communities.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the
Very
Green
involved in
Communities.
that.
Forum,
So
yeah.
why can't we meet on the 15th?
Jewish holidays.
But, I mean, is anybody Jewish in this?
Well, again, for the open meeting, it's access for everybody. Anybody could be attending this meeting right
We've
now.
gotten complaints from people in the Jewish community that we're not sensitive to the holiday schedule, so we
But I've
try
got Yom Kippur on the next day.
Well, it starts that.
Starts
evening.
sundown, starts sundown the day
Sunset.
before.
Only because they can access the meeting because it's on YouTube, you know, I mean.
If
Well,
it's
it isn't-
hybrid,
I mean,
it
it's
might
more than
be.
just,
It's a
it's a
10-day.
big thing. I mean, they do a lot.
It's their high
Have the meeting
holidays.
before
I understand,
sunset.
so they can watch it at another time.
But they would be allowed to
Just
participate.
celebrating.
Anybody could show
Just
up right now and
yeah.
participate in this meeting.
Right.
Right.
So we're denying access to participation.
Right.
If somebody wanted to come. Our
Can we do
meetings
the
are scintillating.
16th?
People are gonna start wanting to come and hang out
I-
here.
It's also Yom
The 16th is a Thursday?
It's
That's
Yom
the
Kippur
holiday.
also.
Oh,
That-
that's the
that is
holiday.
holiday.
It starts the night before and it goes to the entire next day.
Yes.
Well, if you wanted to do it on that Tuesday, I could miss one meeting. I mean, I feel like
Select board,
it's too long of a span.
select board on the 14th.
Thanks for letting me know.
Well, Chris is committed.
CPDC on the 13th.
21st?
We have a community engagement meeting that night.
21st and the 20th.
Downtown.
On the 22nd or the 21st?
And the 22nd, we have Climate Action Committee major public forum.
How about the 29th?
The 29th is possible finance committee meeting. That's a TBD.
Well, why don't we D ours before they TBD theirs?
It's also a big night for the Reading Coalition annual meeting and awards. I don't know if anybody belongs to the Reading Coalition, but
We could have an earlier one on the 15th as long as it ends before 6:54 p.m.
Could do that.
have it during the day.
Just saying, 5:30.
Yep, I could do earlier on the 15th.
I can too.
I can.
Okay.
5 to
6:54?
6:54?
So 5 to 6:30, so let's schedule it for 5 to 6:30 so that we don't. Does that seem
5
reasonable?
to 6:30 on the
You need a
15th?
very tight agenda, because that's,
Yeah, I mean, we'll
we
just
have to have a
put
very
a couple of
specific
items on there
topic.
and
It's just
For a long
reviewing
time.
the survey of like preliminary kind of thing, right? Because that would be after the
That would-
street fair.
so the agenda items for the first will be to complete our survey, get it out, get it posted. And then the 15th from 5 to 6:30.
Well, for meeting on the 15th, we'll probably be working on the agenda for the results from the 12th. That would be our time.
Right.
Well, it might not be totally available by then, but maybe the electronic
See what we have so
survey
far.
would be. But that would definitely be part of the agenda. And then next steps on public input, because it's. Then on October,
So what, so
So
on
there
the
wouldn't be
15th, are we gonna
anything
meet
20th
earlier
or
or what?
29th?
5 to 6:30.
So that's a done deal, that works.
Did you say the 29th?
I was asking, is, so there's nothing that week? For us?
There's stuff every night.
Okay.
But I don't think, I mean, it's a maybe on the finance committee and it's the Reading Coalition annual meeting and awards, so. It's up to the board.
Bernie, on the 1st, is that gonna be a 7 o'clock meeting?
Yeah.
It
Cause that
works
could
for
be a
me.
long one, if we're doing survey stuff and
Mhm.
trying to, you know,
Would you suggest something at like 6:30 instead, you mean?
yeah, I would think.
That sounds good.
Are people able to get here for 6:30 on?
I could-
It might be close for me, but I would, show up. Plus, if it's hybrid, then I'll be fine regardless.
Okay, so the first, 6:30, the 15th, 5 to 6:30. 29th, Um, 7 to 9. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
October. First is 6th of October.
It's the Economic Development Summit.
That night.
Well, the 13th would be 2
13th
weeks
would be
after the
2 weeks.
previous anyway.
Say that about the 13th?
Oh, that would be 2 weeks after the 29th anyway.
Yeah, the
The
13th.
13th.
Okay, so October 13th, 7 to 9, okay with people?
Mhm.
27th, bring your Halloween costume, that's 2 weeks after that.
I'm wearing it.
The 27th, 7 to 9,
Yep.
and then we'll see if we can. So I think the agenda would be the first survey, the 15th results, the 29th, more analysis and try to get more public input. And the 13th, we can maybe start working on conclusions, data analysis and so forth.
When do we have to wrap up? December 15th or something?
31st.
31st.
But it can be extended if need be.
Were there any lessons you learned, Julie and Jean, from obtaining these survey results? The 1,500 response is quite good. Was there anything that you did? I mean, it sounds like you were at the train station handing out surveys. What other manner did you?
We walked the downtown, we talked to people, we had a pizza and ice cream night where we drew 100 people. We posted it everywhere. We sent out postcards with the QR code on it. We just really did an extensive amount of outreach.
And over what time were you able to? Did you have to do
It's
that?
open for a month in the fall, a month, 5 to 6 weeks maybe actually, in the fall of 2019. I'm sending the information, I'm preparing the email to you guys right now.
That's fantastic. Okay. Okay, so that gives us some parameters in terms of the length of the survey time, what you had to do to get it, and we'll piggyback on all those results. That will be very, very helpful.
If we wanted to send
Supplement
out a postcard or have a physical survey, do we have the means by which to print things or make copies, or do we need to do a GoFundMe or?
We don't have a budget for this committee. So, the cost of printing things and all of that gets quite expensive with the, we did postcards, but as you know, it's pricey. We have a copy machine at town hall, so we can certainly help with, the basics of using the town hall copy machine.
Does the PTTTF have a budget?
No,
The issue is the postage,
Right.
is what you'll run into. That's,
but if you had an outreach strategy with some costs associated with it, and you wanted to make a proposal, that might be one way of doing it. It may not be that much money.
To whom do we propose this?
I guess you'd probably wanna bring it to Julie and I, and we could kind of run it up the flagpole and see if there's some budget someplace.
do we want to see how the street fair survey thing comes back? I mean, maybe we get like 4,000 or 5,000 things and then we're like, this is crazy, 5,000 out of 27,000 people? As long as it's drilled down on the survey, are you a resident? Yes. Like,
Well, I think we want to, I mean, in terms of the electronic one, that is no cost. There's no reason to leave that up, not to leave that up for a full 6 weeks, much like because again, anything that happens on Fall Street Fair Day is a strange, it's like, yes, they're downtown, but they're downtown in a different way than their usual way. So we want to capture them that day, but we also don't want to miss out people just when they're downtown shopping or parking or. So I don't think we're done after the Fall Street. I think that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
start.
Yeah, we gotta, that's a good way to kick it off and get some viral marketing done, whatever we can try to do.
But it sounds like if we're looking for cheap and cheerful, we may want to focus on the electronic avenue more in the beginning and then see if we feel like we're gathering enough data, in which case, if not, we need to write a proposal for, we want to print some stuff and.
Do you have any, I know we have the documents up for the 08, 09. There was quite a lot of work done. Do we have any of the raw data there that was, because I know there was quite a lot of outreach. It would be useful to just have some of that if it supplements. Maybe.
It's probably in the report. I don't know if the raw data is there.
Yeah. I remember seeing stuff in the
There's
report.
tables and charts.
Right, the data's compiled in it, but it's not, they're not gonna give you the background of the data.
Yeah, and I'm confusing, there was I think a Nelson Nygaard survey, I think it was done then and was updated again in 18, and I can't, in my mind, keep it clear, keep distinguished between what's in their information and what's from the survey, so that's why I'm asking the question. But it would be helpful to do that. The Nelson Nygaard studies, just as I've read them, they're not all, I mean, there's a couple hundred pages of report. The issue is that it's based on like 2 days of survey data. So it's like a Tuesday afternoon
Thursday
and a Wednesday morning or something like that. And-
That's because of the budget that we had to
Right.
work with.
Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to draw conclusions from 2 days, and I think it was in April, which doesn't really give you enough data. So it would be useful if we had more real-time data. I don't know if that exists anywhere. Like, I know the traffic enforcement, not the traffic, Ryan Percival, I think I've talked to him in the past, and he's got some traffic data, but I don't know if that somehow you can tease out of that parking information or not, but maybe it's useful to have the traffic data alone, just because if X percent of the people that traverse Reading might park here, that would be useful data to at least look at and consider. And then because I know he's got that, I'll look and see what he sent me on that.
So are you saying in October, you're gonna spend the meetings in September talking about crafting the survey and that kind of thing, and then you're gonna shift in October to look at, to begin to think about outreach or data, or
I think, I would think, I mean, this is just me talking, I'm not, I'm just saying if 4 to 6 weeks is the data collection period, that kind of gets us to the end of September. And then if we can use October's meetings to start analyzing and concluding and writing up recommendations, and then there'll be some slippage and maybe we have to go into November, but maybe we publish it and see if we get reactions to it at some point. And if we tell everybody it's gonna cost $25 for every parking space in Reading, we'll get a whole lot of input. But I don't think that's what we really want to do. Does that make sense to you?
so for me, I'm always thinking about the need to do outreach to the public.
Yeah.
And that's why we have all of these meetings built into the fall calendar, where people can participate in the conversation about parking. That would be something I might suggest you give some thought to, maybe at a future agenda. What's the best way of getting that feedback
Right.
in a real meeting where,
So say maybe use one of our early October meeting times to actively invite the public to come in and talk.
something like that, yeah.
I don't want us to get too bogged down with the data, because I
Yeah.
think that eliminates the personal connection with people.
Yeah.
So I think we can be collecting data forever and still not know what we're talking about.
Right.
And so until we actually talk to the businesses, in addition to what data we already have from Julie, of saying, where do your employees park? And will they park on Linden Street as opposed to parking at the train station? Because there's so much parking on the outer core that Julie pointed out that is not used at all. So I think that part of the analysis, I don't see it happening. I feel like that's a big part of what we kind of need to figure out what goes where. Not so much, well, how did you get here? Where did you go? Where did you park? Like the issues are the employee spaces and where the customers are going and how to have everybody work beautifully together so that it's like a nice flow, and I think, I'm not getting that from the data that we might be collecting. So, but it could be that we're collecting the employee parking permit data at another time. Does that make sense? Like, that's not gonna be at the fair. We're not gonna get any employee data from the fair. So if the biggest part of our spaces are employee parking spaces, then I think that we really need to try and figure out when we're gonna talk about that. How helping the stores figure out where their employees are supposed to park. And not be pissed off before they get to work every day, because they have to walk 10 minutes. Does that make sense?
I think a lot of employees are gonna be actually at the fair because businesses are gonna be open down there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
using
So I think you need
Pizza Town as an example or whatever, that those businesses are gonna be open. We can actively find out where you're parking. Obviously, we can do that now,
right,
but then we'd be able
but
to
will
as
that
well.
be separated from just the general, I mean, I think that their analysis is different than everything else, because if your employee's not willing to park on Woburn Street to walk to your store, well, where are they gonna park? And are they taking someone else's spot in the back of CVS parking lot? You know what I mean? Like, that kind of information is what I feel like I'm missing, that will help in the long run. So I agree with you that, like, my neighbors, they should be here, but they're not here, because they're not gonna look online, they're not gonna go downtown to the fair, because they don't have young kids anymore. So there's a lot of people that we're gonna miss that are very impacted by this. So, and I'm happy to go knock on their doors, but I'm not knocking on everybody's door. So I think postcards or the blast on the cell phones for a certain part of town might work, not the entire town, but a certain part that is really, will be impacted. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if it costs those blasts, we get it when we can't park on the street or anything. Is that a function that we can use for outreach?
We've done that in the past, and it's not a perfect tool because, for example, when we were before the select board, people spoke from the public and said, we didn't know anything about this. And we said, well, I don't know, Julie, 4,000 hits from our code red?
Yeah, and we sent it twice.
We sent it twice. So we sent that
Yeah.
messaging
Yeah.
twice to 4,000 data points.
Yeah.
And we can see in our system if people opened the email or
You can see how long people listen to the voice
listened to
message
the
for,
voice message. And while we were
how many
listening-
different devices they got it on and listened to it.
Yeah, we have real-time data on how it worked. And for a fact, one of the people that said, I didn't know anything about it, was someone we could look at our data and see that they did get the information.
Everybody, you could look them all up.
So every person that spoke up and said, it's not fair that you guys didn't tell us anything, all got the message that
And
was sent
listened
out.
to it.
So I think
Multiple times.
I think what's important for that argument from people is that just doing it at the fair and the surveys, like you said, we have to kind of blast it all over the place, put things at the library. We're still gonna there's gonna be a portion that's gonna be missed for people that live here but don't participate. And they don't, they'll go to CV, do you know what I mean? There's a big part of the community that they don't go to the senior center, like there's a big middle core of people that have no one in the schools, they don't have anyone that's doing anything. And a bunch of my neighbors got the blast, but that was after we'd already had all these other meetings, and so it's a timing issue as well, so.
Right, so I think the crux of the matter is, we need to reach out, we need to
Right.
probably reuse some of these things, and we need to also acknowledge that no matter how much outreach we do, people will not be satisfied, and at some point, we just have to draw a line in the sand and say, we have done as much as we can, and now we need to make some decisions and recommendations.
So I don't want us to necessarily just we can collect tons of data, but eventually you're just gonna have to figure out
What's the right that are declared?
right.
The other piece of this is what does community engagement look like given where we're at with COVID and the Delta variant? Community engagement wants to be, in my opinion, wants to be in person. I think that's the best community engagement you can do. But if you have an international health pandemic, you have to think about the best way to, what's practical,
Do it safely, yeah.
safety.
And I think that the Zoom meetings is something that we didn't have before. I mean, we did, Julie, you did a ton of Zoom meetings on not just parking, but a lot of that, and it's just hard to get people to Zoom in. And, but I mean, I think advertising and public outreach and trying to encourage people, I mean, I guess, obviously this is a public meeting, so I guess the message to the public is, please attend, please let us know what your feelings are with respect to parking, participate in our surveys, come to the meetings, and do everything you can to get the outreach, and we'll try to get outreach back to the community as much as we can. And senior center, the property tax workers, did you say that I wrote it down, but I wasn't sure how we would use them? Can you?
Well, again, it goes back to safety, number one.
Yep.
And I don't know how comfortable property tax workers will be to do any work related to this, but potentially they are a resource and they are a part of our set of tools that we have to offer. I don't know how.
What would they typically, what does a property tax worker do,
So as a
and how would
property
they?
tax worker, we have a program, there's not many of them, but you have to qualify and you can basically work for the town in exchange for getting money off of your
I see,
property tax. So
okay,
instead of us paying you, we give you a credit back on your real estate tax.
I see, okay, and you
Is
said,
there any openings?
Really good job.
You have to qualify.
are they sort of, I mean, they may not be willing, but are they, how many people
I
are
don't
we
know
talking about?
really, I don't know really, because of COVID.
Yeah,
The age demographic may, in a normal time, yes. In this time, I don't know.
would they like stuff
So would they
envelopes,
stuff
or would
envelopes
they?
or put stickers on cards?
That
That
kind
kind
of
of
thing,
task?
maybe,
Okay,
and I just don't know how, I don't wanna overpromise,
yeah, right,
but it's a potential resource.
Okay.
Just thinking through the survey, it sounds like we need to make sure that we get the correct and the various different users of the parking spaces. So we wanna get a particular amount of employees, we wanna get a particular amount of business owners, I think it's different, and residents, and we need to make sure that, just doing the fair day, may not get the
Right.
types that we need, so we need to make sure that we're getting at least an X amount of people of each group, I would think, and so backing up the problem that way would be really helpful.
yeah, and I think,
Because I still don't really understand what exactly the problem is, so I think has to do with a push-pull between customers and employees using the same parking.
That's kind
There
of what
may
I
be
think
some
it
other
is.
ones, that's all I have.
So and combined with how the spaces are signed, it's one here and different here and pointing them to it, and there's free parking spaces that can be used by some, but they don't know they're there and.
Yeah, so it sounds like, map would help, like a downtown map, which would help with the wayfinding, could even include places, I don't know if that's possible, but actual businesses on the sign. And a couple of those in the spots, people would see it, or if they're looking at it or whatever, and they might know, oh, there's some other parking here.
Right, so I don't know
Or-
I don't know if you would tell, I keep pointing to you, I just don't mean to do that. It's whoever has a store,
I feel like you have a lot to say.
Dan is
on
also,
it,
and
so-
Tom has the
I know.
show, so
So
we
all
are
of
all
you,
here for you.
As one thing, when you get a new employee and they drive, do you say, find a space, or here's a sticker, look for the signs, or is there a map given out saying, these are the specific streets that you can park on, I recommend going over here, cause you never get ticketed over here, or it's free park, do you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
if you could really, for customers or employees, like, lay it out really well, so that they would know where they can park and not,
Agreed.
have to kind of search for parking, cause I'm sure that's a pain in the neck at 10 o'clock or before their shift or whatever.
what's the pushback that you get from employees? Can you give
Well,
us any feedback?
so I will share an anecdotal piece of information. So the employee permit, the parking permit that you can buy, is not an insignificant cost. It's a few $100s. And for me, everybody I employ is part-time. I have one person for whom I bought a permit one year that we decided that she ultimately was like, her hours were erratic enough that it just ultimately wasn't worth it. And so what we would try to do back in the days when parking was being enforced, unlike now, so right now it's a free-for-all, I'm not gonna lie. But back when parking really was being enforced, people would generally I would ask them to try to just park outside, not take customer spots. And so please try to park outside of the downtown area. So that meant we would just go, like if you go down Upper Haven a little further past where their spaces are designated, then these are all renting residents who worked for me anyway, so they were just working, not that that was a resident spot either, it was an unsigned anything. So some people in those neighborhoods started getting crabby that people were parking there for 3 or 4 hours, even though they all had driveways and this was in no way impacting their life. I got nasty notes on my car at one point. The first year before, when I was new, I didn't get an employment, like they ran out of employee permits, so I couldn't buy one for myself that first year either. So it was like the land of hostility. And so, everybody just kind of, these days, because parking is not enforced, we try to just be respectful and not take up too many spaces in all the same places and move it around so that things keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to predict that is, to the degree that we get back to a pre-COVID usage pattern, and then you add a lot more density, I think that will be the most difficult challenge in terms of parking that Reading has. And I think that's not gonna go away. It's gonna probably get worse. The question is how to manage it.
That's why I, as a business owner, was very excited by this initial proposal of the inner core, outer core, increasing employee spaces and making it abundantly clear and possibly increasing access to the number of permits. So it was like, they're free, they're plentiful, here are the spaces. And then, so get out of the way so that customers and just visitors to downtown could be in the inner core.
Speaking of myself, long-term business downtown, we actually only have 2 employees besides the owners, and we have a couple we own a couple of spots. One employee's been with us for over 20 years. He buys his spot and he parks his sticker. He parks on Woburn Street, and the other employee walks. He's
We have
a
walkers too.
walker. But I think if you look at some of these other towns, I think they do allocate spots. Like I know down in, we have a business down in Somerville, for example, and they have some spots where the employees can park and they'll bus them down to the certain spots, but I think a better barometer would trying to get some of the larger businesses, that are down, like the CVS, the Bunratty's, the Venetian Moon, the people that have the employees, those are the ones you want to get the survey and try to address them, be sensitive to their employees.
Typically, if you go to a shopping center or something, you can sort of tell that the employees are told, park
Park in the back.
away,
Right.
park in the back of the lot.
That's retail 101.
Yeah, exactly.
take up
It
the
seems like
spots, right?
that's
That's
pretty
what they do.
straightforward to me, why you have to have employee permits and stuff to get people to just park on a couple of streets over and walk over. I guess
You need
that's
the permits so that you don't have rabble-rousing angry residents saying you're not supposed to be parking here.
Yeah. I parked in some of the residential streets and I never had that issue, but it doesn't mean that, it sounds like it's more of an issue for people that do it every single day. So why don't we, is there anything else any other agenda items that people might want to discuss before we adjourn? And
Good question. Is there a difference between employee sticker and like the residential sticker?
Yes.
As far as like what you're allowed or not allowed to do?
If I could ask you, I don't know if this is the time, but there's a young lady, is she here for public, can we allow public comment?
absolutely, I think,
She sat through the whole meeting, I'd just be curious what if she's got any comments for us to address.
Well, that's what I'm here for, because Jean and Julie have heard me and I've followed CBDC Selectmen Board. I'm Caroline Gauthier, I'm the owner and the main physician of Reading Clinical Specialist. We're located at 50 Haven Street. I'm also a Reading resident from 76 Washington Street. So I walk to the downtown a lot as well, and I have a 5-year-old, and I wanna talk about the business part, that's what some of the concerns I wanted to share with you guys today, or just consideration to maybe think about, from my perspective. I know a lot of you are business owners may have different issues than what I have, but, so I'm a podiatrist, I treat foot and ankle issues. All my patients have foot and ankle pain, broken bone, wounds, had surgery, so my patient population cannot walk long distances. And so my practice is on Haven Street, and my patient mainly use the Brandy Court parking spot, and then some of the lower Haven Street parking that are available there. So that's a concern that I have for patients is the distance that they have to walk. I serve a lot of the seniors of Reading. A big part of my patients are seniors, disabled people that are local, but I also attract a lot of the town around Reading. A lot of people come from Burlington, Linfield, so my patients, they drive here. Not a lot of them walk unless they're, from 30 Haven and you just come down the elevator to see me. So that's a big part of, I'm concerned that the Brady Court parking spot, the parking lot is being kind of overused by different things. So pre-COVID, we had issues before. A patient would complain they had to drive 30 minutes to try to find a spot to be able to come to their appointment. Since we're open post-COVID, it's still the same issues. I tell my patient, call the town hall, it's a town parking, I'll share your concern, I go to meeting, but I ask patients to call probably to complain to me, but not to the town. I have concerns about some of the 40R being built around, and they're using some of the commercial space. I know they're building parking for their tenants. However, they may rent parking that they have available in their underground parking, but the people that are gonna come and shop there, they're gonna run out of parking space and probably get to Brady Court parking lot, so we'll have more issues. I've had issues with people, construction, people parking in those spots and taking spots almost an entire day or half a day, so we're gonna report those as well, but that's an issue. And I have employees as well that are Reading residents and some are not Reading residents. Have 3 part-time employees that park in the space that the landlord provides for me, but I have 3 full-time employees that have a parking placard to park behind our parking, our building. Couple of issues since the time limit of Brady Court has been moved from 2 hours to 4 hours. That was the major issues for patients to try to find a parking spot. I think the town did this so people could park and hit multiple shops at the same time, but my patients are in and out in an hour. If it's more than this, then it means I'm really behind and it's not the type of first service I provide. So I had asked the selectmen board to consider maybe doing like some parking 2 hours, some parking spot for 4 hours, so that there's a variety and there's a little bit of more turnaround time from my current situation. So my employees, they don't mind walking, there's no issues with them, or I don't have somebody to accommodate a disability, but my patient, they need to have access for my actual business there. So these are just a few things I wanted to share with you guys about my business and some of the issues I've had with parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's extremely helpful, thanks so much.
Can we ask her questions?
Are there any, can we tell if there are any people on the Zoom meeting who would like to make a comment?
You just have Sarah,
Yeah, just me.
Okay, thanks.
and then I'm Reading Planning.
Oh, you're ready.
You're ready.
And RCTV, and then here are you guys.
Andrew is a staff, okay.
And Bob will just say that, please make every one of your headlines say like, the parking commission wants to hear from you.
There you go.
Mark is
And I'm
looking
more
for
than
input
happy to
from you.
knock at doors on the Lower Haven and, make them aware of your initiative. I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you.
The committee, so thank you for doing what you're doing for us, so.
Thank you.
Can you comment whether, so you presumably do you rent some space in a building and that's on Haven Street, right? But so therefore the building that you're renting from doesn't have spaces designated for the tenants of the building, is that right?
The building, so the 50 Haven has the 30 Haven tenants park there. And then they gave us 2 parking per businesses we can park there. So me and the other doctor use those. And then the landlord has the little parking lot behind the postmark. I don't know if they're renting that space, but they're letting us use 3 space, at least in my unit. And then I get 3 employee parking placard for my full-time employees to park in the back. Which sometimes is an issue because now the parking in the back is 4 hours, and then the employees can park in designated spots along the fence, but also the people coming to shop for 4 hours, so it's 4 hours for employee parking. So that was an issue, that if the employee would come, go home for lunch and try to come back, oftentimes like a patron of the business around has used that spot, or there was an issue with that. If they left the premises or could not even find a parking spot if they came to work, past 8:20, these spots were all taken, so.
So just just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
So as a tenant, you're entitled to 2 spaces, but the doctors need those to park.
Yes.
The other employees have, when you say placards, you mean employee permits that you purchased from the town?
Yes,
And they can park in designated employee parking? Okay.
if it's available.
And
And
so when
then-
they come back, have they had trouble finding spots on Woburn Street, on those employee parking spots?
It depends on the day. Sometimes yes, maybe half the time, no, so.
So what do your patients or customers do? They just try to find a spot, and some of them are temporarily handicapped or permanently, and do they use the handicap spots?
They do use those. There's 2 or 3 in the front and 2 in the back. So they're okay, but not.
Then other ones you might have to help, right? Like bring a wheelchair out to them or something like that, yeah.
Wheelchair, and they call us if they need, or we bring them back if we need to.
How often are those spaces, the handicap spaces, occupied such that your patients cannot use those
Well,
handicap?
These are handicap parking. The turnaround is, they're busy all day, but it's not the handicap people so much that have complained. It's more my 94-year-old patient coming
Right.
with her walker, that has to park. They have to go around. Sometimes the daughter drops them off, and then they say good luck, or they call us, and then they turn and they turn and they turn to try to find a spot kind of at a reasonable distance, that they don't have to drive to CVS to park their car, to go back and find their, elderly mom or dad, so.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, was your practice new when you opened on Haven Street, or where had you been located
It was
previously?
on Ash Street, across the McDonald and the professional building there for 39 years. And then I moved it in December of 2018 to Haven Street.
And how was the parking over on Ash Street?
You got busy when the orthodontists were there, but people were able to find a parking within 10 minutes. They would say it's busy, but here says, gosh, you can find a parking spot. I've been like driving around for 25 minutes, or calling the office saying I'll be late, I cannot find a parking spot.
And is that the same, is it the same all day long for your patients, or is there certain times
I
of the
think
day?
late morning and early afternoon
Are the worst. And have you noticed that the construction gentlemen or women I find when I'm walking my dogs, they're there very early. Are they there, are they still there as much as they used to be?
1 o'clock, there's always big trucks.
Okay,
Which construction project?
so for a long time,
The postmark's done now.
and I think, and the E-Mark building, a lot of them will park behind there and walk up, and they'll park down Haven and walk up.
Gould Street
Is
building?
Gold Street done?
I mean, Gould Street,
Almost.
sorry, well, same thing.
Almost, there's a little.
Almost, but they still park on the street.
And then we're
'cause-
gonna have the Shoot Street, then we're
Very
gonna
early.
have the old Rite Aids, workers, so it'll be ongoing for a
Right.
little while until they're done.
There's a lot of people that park early. I
The
don't know.
train station is.
Carolyn, do you have any suggestions for parking? Have you thought of anything you could share with us?
I think you need a parking garage, but I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon, right? But I think moving the employee parking in the outer core makes sense. And then the 40R, so for example, the Shoot building, they're gonna take 31 parking on their property, they're gonna take them away and build a big building, and they're replacing their 31 business parking spot by two business parking spot on the street, so I know there's enough parking for the tenants, and then they're gonna probably rent the extra space to commercial to make some money, but where are those 31 spots that were used by the business owners, by their patrons gonna go? They gotta, maybe move to the train station now that it's not as busy, maybe the problem will solve by itself partially, but they're gonna also come and park in the parking lot that I'm most affected by.
And back to the Brandy Court lot, something that I've been hearing anecdotally a lot though is that the reason that that lot is so full is that in addition to, so your practice is there, and then there's a large dentist there, and another doctor's office there. And I've heard that those employees, beyond the employee spots, are just parking there all day long, even though they're not supposed to.
Since the 4-hour
Yeah.
change, then they park, they move a different spot, or they
So I think I'm just curious what that lot would look like if we actually had the outer core parking and all of those people abided by that concept.
it may help.
You might
Anything's
actually
gonna
find enough spaces in there for patients,
So I
particularly since
forbid
they're in
my
and out.
staff from doing this because I want them for
There's no
patients.
enforcement.
So there isn't right now, but there will be again.
So as far as the 4-hour in the two lots, I drove to CVS the other day and I was actually surprised to see that it's 4-hour parking there, because I'm starting to think of why is it 4-hour parking if I can understand after hours going to dinner and needing 2 hours to eat or 2.5 and.
It's lunch, it's hair, it's shopping, it's bank.
I guess, but I think,
People
is that
wanna do
something we
multiple-
can look at as far as against the fence being 4 hours and the rest of it not being 4 hour, like kind of a mixed usage kind of a approach to some of the lots? Because I understand the length of time for some of the businesses, but some of them, like for hers, it's not that, the turnover is pretty fast, and sometimes for CVS, it's still pretty fast. So I think, and I know Bob was great in saying you don't determine the parking by the store, but it still would warrant those areas still providing a faster turnover section in those lots to kind of keep things moving. It's just a thought. I don't know if in some future meeting, we can also go over the map, like not street by street, but kind of section by section, and see if maybe we can tweak some things like on Woburn Street or other places where right now it's free parking or it's 2-hour customer parking, and maybe change it all to employee and customer, kind of tweak it a little bit to get some more employee spaces. Kind of like moving the inner core to the outer core for the employees a little bit.
Yeah, if you haven't spent quality time with,
Oh, I've intimately with this man.
She was on a bunch of the calls.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that was the vision. Exactly that, is the
Right.
variability necessary in the parking lots.
Right.
I think that was the
Right.
driving force behind the kiosk idea of like, some
Right.
people need it for longer, some people don't.
Right.
Let's empower them to get in and out and
Right.
still have a chance.
Yeah, we really thought the kiosk idea was a good idea because it would be a built-in way to regulate exactly what you're saying, rather than saying these spaces are this amount of time, those spaces are those amount of time.
Right.
We're empowering the user to say, you can come, and if you're gonna come and do a 15-minute, 20-minute thing, it could be free. Or maybe it's a half an
Right.
hour, maybe
Right.
the first hour is free. But then from there on, you price it to modify and to shape people's behavior.
Right.
And then at a certain point, so that people that work in downtown businesses aren't taking up spaces for 4 hours. You create that through the financial piece of saying anything over the first hour now, you're gonna pay.
Right.
And the kiosk would control
Mm.
that.
And then providing enough employee parking outside so that
That's
people,
all
it's like,
exactly.
get them out of there.
Kind of managing them,
Yeah.
saying you come here for free, but you can pay for here. kind of
Right,
thing.
so what Nelson Nygaard's studies both times said was, you don't have a parking supply problem, you have a parking management problem. And that these techniques that we've studied and looked at would be ways to manage that.
That was a good study.
So can I ask, your name was Caroline?
Caroline.
How did you find out about this meeting? Like,
I've been Julie. I went to the CPDC, well, I was online and I had some, on Zoom, and I had some issues I didn't feel I could share with the CPDC, one of the concerns that they're planning, and just wanted them to consider about the current businesses that are in Lower Haven. And so Julie told me about the need.
So, did you know about the committee forming and whatnot? You're a Reading resident
I am
as well?
already, I didn't, well, I heard from this board, the selectmen board meeting of one of them that they wanted to have a task force, and Julie I've been on some of the calls and asked if I was interested, and I was more by the business interest, but I don't know if I didn't have a business, if I would really pay attention until I couldn't park when I went shopping.
Because I guess for me, after hearing everything you said, I would offer to switch places with you. Yeah, I don't know if it's legally allowed at this point, but I think your voice and explanation on certain things just warrants a seat over here. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind giving it up to you if that was the
I thought about it
case.
because it's really, dear to my heart, and I wanted to keep my business in Reading, because I considered moving out of Reading. But I don't know if I have the commitment with the business and a little kid and not enough support. I didn't feel, I'd rather be here and helping you guys in the shadow rather than committing and not being able to deliver any help or not as much help as you need.
I can respect that. No, I appreciate you for showing up and speaking up, because it definitely, the more people that we can get that provides us input and whatnot in great detail, I think is very beneficial.
I'm not gonna have a booth at the town fair. I always love being there, but because of COVID and the Delta variant, I'm not gonna have a booth. I don't wanna put my staff at risk or myself. My son is not vaccinated. I will fill out survey, I can help, but as a business owner who loves having my little booth and meeting people and shaking hands, this year I'm not gonna do it because of that.
Well, I appreciate you for sticking around in Reading and whatnot, and I really appreciate your feedback.
Caroline, you said that there were other practices in the same area and that their employees are using up spaces that normally would be available for,
Yeah.
if they were not parking in those, if the employees were not parking in those spaces, do you think that there'd be a sufficient amount of spaces for the patients?
I felt like when it was a 2-hour parking lot in the back, that maybe little employee at least, that I'm aware could go out every 2 hours and change their cars. I don't think it was as much of a problem. And I didn't see that there was as much of an issue back then. Maybe I was just starting and I was not as busy neither as practice maybe, but I felt that it was not as much of an issue when it was a 2-hour parking.
But have you talked to the other practices and, the owners of the practices, have you talked to one another and said, look, we can't have our employees parking here all day because it's affecting our patient satisfaction? Why don't you tell all the employees to go park somewhere else? Well, have you had that conversation?
Yeah, I've had it with Reading Pediatrics, some of the IP meeting at Winchester Hospital, seeing what they're doing, and, they're saying to their staff not to do it, but
But
what happened,
they ignore the,
and, there's more than, it's not just 50 Haven or 52 Haven, there's other, 2 Haven and some of the other businesses around are, all doing it, I think.
that's very helpful.
Thank you, Karen.
And the 31 spots that you said were going to be displaced, what, I didn't understand.
So that's the Green Tomato Building, the Chute Street.
Oh, okay.
There's a proposal for a 40R, which really will take the actual current building, the parking lot, and then 5-story high. And you're gonna have an underground parking for the tenants, but there's a parking lot like where the laundromat is in
Right.
that corner. So that's all going away, and you're gonna replace that by 2 street parking, right, across the depot.
Two street, what do you mean?
Street parking, they're gonna add 2 street parking and take the parking lot in the back.
Two
So two
spaces?
spaces in front.
Yeah, and then the parking lot is going away.
But who has access to that parking lot right now?
The businesses.
It's a privately owned lot.
Right, it's a private, so it's not like, so the
but-
businesses that will no longer be in that building, because that building's only gonna have 2 commercial.
You're gonna have
They'll-
commercial.
Businesses on the
There'll be
first
2,
floor.
there are 2 commercial spaces.
Laundromat customers, laundromat's going. It's only gonna be two merchants.
There's two commercial spaces. I'm not saying it's not an issue, I'm just saying, I think it's just a,
But there'll be a,
the idea that there are 31 spaces there right now, those are not 31 spaces that are in play in this conversation, they're privately owned anyway, so it's nothing we can regulate or
They're
impact.
semi in play because they're taking, customers are parking
Right,
there.
so the
and
laundromat,
Spaces.
so they're not gonna be available.
But I
So
don't think the
you can
laundromat's
make
gonna
out
go
a
back
model.
into that spot though.
Right,
I don't know if the laundromat, I don't know who gets to park in that lot right
I'm
now.
sure there's a few that sneak over there.
I have no doubt, I'm just saying,
but
it's not parking that we have any influence over, even in
well,
its
no, we
current.
don't have influence on that, but when they get rid of those spaces and they
It'll
put
affect
the
us.
residents underneath, they're gonna then use the resident-only parking spaces across the street that are part of the train area.
Well, except that they will have 1.25 spaces per resident,
Right, I'm not worried about the resident parking, I'm worried about
the two commercial spaces.
the commercial,
The customers.
the customers,
Patrons.
or,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's gonna be
They're gonna go,
commercial on
yeah.
the first floor.
Right, there are two commercial
Right,
spaces.
so there's only 2 spaces, which couldn't possibly be enough for whatever they're gonna go under there. 'Cause it's not-
And that lot is used by people going to everything but the dog and the green tomato. I mean, even though it is a private lot, I mean, nobody's enforcing that you can't park there. I've parked there for going into, was it Capri, the pizza place there?
Columbo's, yeah. Well, I guess, at the end of the day, we have no
Right.
influence over, that's property
not
that's
part of
privately
our
owned, we can't do
parking
anything
space.
about it, so.
No, we can't, but I'm just saying that we do use it, people do use it.
Yeah.
So the loss of it will create a need for more spaces to make up for that loss. Maybe not all 31, but,
Yeah, no, fair enough.
yeah.
the 40R development creates a greater burden on the existing stock of spaces that's available, both public and private. So you bring more people in and it's not clear. How many spaces will be under the building? Do we know?
If you
I mean, I
follow
don't
the
know.
ratio of 1.25, I don't have the detail, they said that with 40, 30, 35, 40 spots, I think, I don't have the exact number, but.
I just wanna mention that the CPDC's just had one meeting on this project, right? So it's gonna change. It probably materially will be like the way Caroline and you all are describing, but the actual numbers of spaces and units and stories and will change. So yeah.
Right. I mean, I think if we're learning anything here tonight, though, it's that we can't adjudicate space by space and area by, it's like, we need to just be like, how is parking used, right? Because it's like, well, we don't know what the two businesses are that are gonna be in there, and we don't know if all the residents are gonna, so that's why it's like types of parking matter. We can't be saying like what business is gonna be there, we don't know. It's not, they can't even break ground on it for 2 years, so,
And it might change.
and it might change.
Well, I think we better be respectful of staff time and we're kind of,
I think we're too late. But it's a nice sentiment.
I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, should we be accepting the minutes of the last meeting?
You're correct. We did have those. I had no comments on them. Anybody else have comments?
I have no comment, I'd just like to make a motion to accept the minutes for the last meeting.
Thank you for doing it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Sarah. And so we still have a motion to, any other business before we adjourn? Okay, we've got, we have a second motion? Second? All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
9:45.
Thanks, Sarah, we hear you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay.